welcome to the grand finale of the GI Game Club for Insomniac Spider-Man!
No, say it isn't over!
Oh, man. Maybe it isn't. There's DLC on the way.
Wait, what?
But we're going to talk about all that. So if you haven't finished Insomniac Spider-Man, I wouldn't recommend watching or listening to this part because I'm here, Leo Vader's here, burp into the mic, Leo. Congratulations. Sergio Vasquez.
Hello.
And Ben Reeves. We did it!
We
Same
did it!
crew, entire game
my
club.
gosh.
This is mission accomplished. Rarely does this happen. Rarely.
When you get trustworthy people, it happens 100% of the time.
Why would we get anybody else? You think I'm going to let Joe Juba back into this room?
Joe Juba?
The joke himself? The human joke? You guys, Spider-Man is done. We finished it.
Yeah.
Ben Reeves?
We did it. I saw credits. I saw post-credits.
Did you?
Saw
Okay.
mid-credits.
Here's the problem with the credits. Let's start right at the credits.
Oh, okay, why not?
First of all, pros and cons of credits. Pros.
Acknowledges the work of the people who worked on the game.
It's not really pros. It's just a list of names.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
But in
Pros joke.
alphabetical order, mind you.
Oh.
And I was going to double check it to see if this is the first Insomniac game, like how long Insomniac's been doing that. But that's a good, classy, Valvian touch.
Yeah.
You know? It's a good move. Cons of credits. Saying, hey, you can hold X to skip credits. And then you're left in the state of, does that mean that we'll jump directly to the post-credits video?
Right.
Or what does that mean exactly? So I sat through those suckers because I was scared of missing this thing.
Did you use the right analog stick to scroll through faster?
I did a little bit.
Yeah.
I might have
I
cheated.
also think that's a pro because it's nice to be able to, all right, let's get this moving.
So, okay.
But I appreciate, like, all right, let's give everybody their due. They spent some time working on the game, so yeah.
And they look cool.
can flash on my screen for like 2 seconds. That's cool.
Yeah, and you just repeatedly give the tip of the cap.
That's
saying,
right,
Good
that's
job,
right,
everybody.
right.
Good job. Well
Write them
done.
all down separately
Yeah.
so that I can put them on my wall.
Can write them letters.
Okay. What did you guys think jumping back into that world after the end of Act 2? What were you guys doing? Because it is chaos in the streets, if you didn't notice.
Yeah. It was a little bit weird just because I'd done like basically every side mission up to that, like every side mission.
Oh,
I guess,
wow, okay.
in the game.
Like even the sort of the smaller activities or just like the side, like the blue.
the blue, yeah, everything. The side activities, all the crimes and all
Okay.
that stuff. And so there wasn't that much to do other than the main story. So there were moments where I was like, the next side mission or the next main mission has to happen, but he's like, well, I guess I should go on patrol for a minute and just, and there wasn't anything to do.
He just literally walked around a building just giving high fives.
Yeah. It's like,
As
all right.
Sable's people tried to shoot you down.
But to answer your question, I thought it was cool how the whole city changed, and it was definitely in a state of disarray. There were more, I don't know if there's more crimes going on, but there was like people up in every like the roof of every building trying to shoot Spider-Man down.
Right. Yeah. Alex from Barnstaple, England says, my favorite part are the pockets of bad guys that now litter what was previously a reasonably safe space to swing around in. It's really ramped up the tension having your spidey sense constantly going off while you swing around, and I love the feeling of cleaning up the streets. When I see those clusters of red dots on my minimap, I can't resist taking 2 minutes to take them down and restore safety to another street corner. They don't respawn if you defeated them, which is a nice touch and helps you feel like you're
Oh,
taking back
really?
the city one
Oh,
inch at a
that's
time.
cool. I wish I'd known that.
It was interesting because like at that point I was kind of mulling over whether or not I was going to do more side stuff because I was the opposite of you where I hadn't done too much of it yet. And at that point I figured, okay, well maybe it'll return to normal once I've beaten the game. So I kind of, at that point I more or less mainlined it because I was just like, okay, if I sort of like start, doing all the side stuff, I'm just going to get like, it's going to be annoying to run around the city with all these people shooting me, so I may as well finish it. So I feel like, on the one hand, that's kind of a bummer, but I think it ups the sense of urgency in terms of like, okay, things are happening. I need to get stuff done now, which I think kind of conflicts with the few moments where they're like, oh, I guess I can just do whatever. But it's like, no, like people it's chaos in the city. Like,
As
I don't
John
know why
Hammond said, people are dying.
Yeah, so it's like, why would you go and chase pigeons when they're like, when everyone someone on every block has a gun at this point, right? Like,
I always
the
stop
pigeon.
what I'm doing when a pigeon pops up.
Even the pigeons have guns. It's crazy.
Oh,
Because
God.
Tyler from Rhode Island says, the size of the city is excellent, the character depth is great, but the amount of critical disaster taking place is staggering. Apocalyptic bioweapons, constant gunfire and crime, 6+ active, deranged, uber deadly villains at once. I constantly felt sorry for Spider-Man and his inability to handle it all, and it left me feeling helpless. Is this what we want out of a Spider-Man game? It didn't feel like a very friendly neighborhood. Also, just on the crimes front, David made this comparison, and then also Juan Benitez, but he goes further with this. He says, hey guys, so we need to talk about that third act. I was really loving the first 2 acts and kind of laughing at some of the similarities to Arkham, but then New York turned into Gotham. Humor me for a bit, but Scarecrow releases fear toxin on the city, Doc Ock releases Devil's Breath, I have to fight the Sinister Six in very reminiscent fights to any Arkham game. Fighting Rhino was like fighting Bane, Vulture equals Man-Bat, Scorpion has a Scarecrow vibe, Mr. Negatives equals Ra's al Ghul. Even the Doc Ock fight was very Joker in the first Arkham. We have to punch him around and then do the quick time event to punch him with the gel. What happened? I thought they had a great flow, but then to cherry pick Arkham bosses and scenarios for the big climax, I felt like it was a missed opportunity for Insomniac to make their own mark.
I feel like the key difference, which is I think it's interesting that he like makes parallels, because I feel like while the sort of the plot elements I think match up, I felt like it was totally different from Arkham in that those I think my favorite fight in the game was the one against Electro and the Vulture, because I feel like
interesting.
taking them both on at the same time, I think like I never hit the ground during that fight, and it was because of like, all right, I have to constantly manage sort of this guy, and it was a really cool fight that you honestly don't get all that often in games in terms of like the dual boss fight where sort of both entities feel distinct. I think doesn't happen that often. And that was a really cool fight, and like that one and the Scorpion and Rhino one, even like just the fact that they're sort of mixing the bosses in that way, I think was actually like one of the best things they've done in the game.
I completely agree. Yeah, those are my favorite scenes in the game, probably.
Yeah, it was one of those things where like it was halfway through the fight, you realize like, oh, we're just staying in the air the whole time. This is something interesting. And I feel like maybe I just am terrible playing, and people watching gameplay footage can probably attest to that. But at the same time, I felt like in theory, this is one of those fights that's cool on paper, but I felt like it wasn't quite achieving it. And apparently listening to interviews with Brian Intihar, he said that originally that was supposed to be 2 fights. And then somebody said, they're both aerial. Like if we have to combine fights, we can combine them. Whereas the Rhino Scorpion one, they said that was always planned together. Which that one almost felt more.
I feel like I had more of it. Like I didn't like that one as much because it felt a little more video gamey, and that like, okay, here are sort of the critical points where you have to lure Rhino in and then deal damage so you can actually hit him. And then like Scorpion wasn't that interesting to fight, and I also was kind of like Scorpion in that game overall kind of left a bad taste in my mouth because like that trippy sequence I wasn't really into.
We have so much to talk about.
That felt Can
we get to that in a little bit?
To jump onto his point though, like comparing it to Arkham is a little bit of, I don't know. He's the one making the comparisons, and maybe there are some comparisons you can make, but I wouldn't say it was 1-to-1 or anything like that. I think, like the Raja Ghul versus Mr. Negative, like, I don't know that there were that many comparisons other than they had a sword.
I thought of it more in the beginning almost because when Kingpin goes down, and it's like, well, he's keeping all the other supervillains at bay, and then they kind of rise up in his absence of power. That was kind of the setup for Arkham Knight, of like, Joker's gone, now everybody else is rising up.
Right. And the other part of it is, like, there's only so many different, like, archetypes of boss fights in video games. So that's maybe part of it is like the fact there's 2 big hulking bruisers that run after you. Like, I think those fights are different enough even on their own, Bane versus like the Rhino, that also, I wouldn't compare them exactly 1-to-1 the way he is. But
you've played a lot of Spider-Man games. What percentage of Rhino boss fights throughout Spider-Man's history are like the video game staple 101? He charges into a wall, you dodge, and then he gets stunned.
Oh, probably 100%. Like, it's like, what else are you going to do? He's the Rhino. Yeah.
Hazel Muhammad writes in about these fights. He says, the tandem boss battles were enjoyable, if a bit simplistic. You basically had to focus on one big bad guy while dodging the other. It felt somewhat repetitive when you make your way to Rhino and Scorpion, but I do thank the developers for teaching the player how to handle Scorpion in the hallucination sequence, since it makes the fight a bit less hectic than the Electro Vulture fight. Barbara Dro, Game Club champion, says, wow, the Electro Vulture fight was great. I can't recall the last time I fought a double boss battle in a game, but I do sort of wish we'd been able to go against Scorpion one-on-one. There seems to be quite a bit of history between him and the Spider-Man. Would have been good to see how that would have concluded, but I did love how he and Rhino kept bickering during the fight. That was fun, and like, it culminates with them being locked in the cargo container at the end there, which you'd think Rhino could get out
you'd think
of.
Rhino would break out of that.
Yeah, they were like surrounding him with guns. It's like, what if he breaks out? You're going to shoot him? That's going to stop him?
I mean, that looked like a big cargo container.
Yeah, I did love, first of all, okay, couple questions for you, Reeves. When you first start fighting Rhino, Peter Parker has some line, or Spider-Man has some line where he says, you're my second favorite Russian. Am I missing something very obvious for what he's talking about there?
Is Sable the other one?
Vladimir Putin.
Oh, Vlad. I get it. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if that was like an allusion to something or what, but I don't know if canonically in the comics he has like a favorite Russian.
I can't think of. Is he big
'Cause I believe-
alcoholic, a white Russian? Maybe.
Do you want me to Google it?
yeah,
Spider-Man's
that's
favorite
it.
Russian?
I think it was just a joke. Like,
white
you're
Russian.
my
Just a
random
second
thing to
favorite,
say.
Yeah.
We should make sure to talk about it long enough that people can finish typing their comments of what it is.
I mean,
Before we move on.
he has other Russian
Myriad.
villains, but
Okay. Also, I like the moment in that damn it, Sorvin. You're so mean. I like the moment in that fight too, where Spider-Man just will not stop making jokes, and then at a certain point he goes like, "Hey, watch out, Rhino poachers!" And Rhino charges him, and he goes like, "You are not funny!" And just like loses it. It was very cool.
I actually,
Rhino, the hero of the piece.
on the point of the
he's just saying what we're all thinking.
on the point of the quips, though, I do appreciate that they know when to tone that down towards the end
Yeah.
of the game, where like him and the Doc Ock fight, like there's like he doesn't really quip at all because
Yeah.
like it's
You're right.
a very stern acknowledgement of like this guy he cares about. Like there's a difference between the fights he's had before and the fight and like this particular fight.
I thought it was
Although,
weird
yeah.
he was quipping at Aunt May's deathbed. That was just
Yeah.
really uncalled for.
I guess she won't be in the sequel.
Well, honestly, we don't want to jump the gun too much here, but I did think
Aunt
about that.
May, I help you out of bed?
But in the after that entire sequence when they're back in the restaurant at the far end, right? They get
Yeah.
their big makeout session on the table or whatever. Swipe the ketchup off the table and passionately make out. No, but he's joking. They're joking around about like, oh, I guess I accidentally made Doc Ock. There's some line about like, oh, remember last time when I made Doc Ock and the Devil's Breath? He makes some joke about it. He's like, hey, your aunt just died as a result of you doing this work.
Well, I mean, wasn't that like a month or two later?
I guess you're right.
There
He
was-
should be joking about it.
Yeah, I
but-
mean, you're totally over it.
I'm
by
into
then.
dark humor now.
No, it's a valid point, but at some point it's like, all right, move on.
Yeah, I
Gotta
was.
do it while it's topical.
Were you guys surprised by them shoving the boss battles together? Because I feel like I started Act 3 of this is going to be a lot of boss fights if we have to take out 6 of these dudes.
Yeah, I thought it was just gonna be like Act 3 was just gonna be one boss fight after the other,
Right.
and it kind of is in a way. But like, I appreciated that they went this dual route instead of like the very sort of like, okay, now I have to take on this guy, because I think my immediate complaint was like, why don't they just team up and like kick his ass again? Like it doesn't. I think the last two obviously are kind of split, but I think I very much like that they changed it up with the dual boss fights for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah, I liked the sequence where you're in Otto's secret, research lab, and you kind of learn the backstory of what everybody's getting out of the deal. But do you feel like their motivation was clear enough, where everybody's like, yeah, sure, we hate Osborn enough, and he can actually help us out with these
Right.
very specific things, like Rhino, he can just get him out of the suit,
Which is
apparently all
like
he's
that
looking for?
raised so many questions for me as I was okay. Look, fine, but I feel like that suit is so stuck that couldn't he just like, I don't know, stop exercising and lose muscle weight and eventually squeeze out of it?
Go on a
And
diet.
How does he pee? Like that was
Right.
like, I spent like a good amount of time thinking like, does that make sense? Does that actually make sense, or is that bull crap? Like, is that a comic book thing, or I don't
He
know.
could be lying.
There's a lot of comic book stuff in here.
Oh, I can't get out of this suit. I'm sorry.
I did think it was cool, conceptually again, when you're playing as Miles, like trying to dodge the Rhino. That stealth sequence eventually got annoying. I was a little bit frustrated by it, but the idea of being, somebody without powers in this world, like trying to dodge that, it was cool at first, but then it got to the point of, why does Rhino care so much about this random idiot? Like,
Yeah,
he's like,
all
"I
he
will
did was
find
make
you."
noise, right?
Yeah.
Like, they didn't know he was doing anything.
No, not at all.
You smell like someone who might be a Spider-Man someday.
You're ripe to get bitten. Yeah. Leo, what was your favorite sequence of everything here?
My favorite sequence, probably the Rhino Scorpion fight.
Really?
Really? That fight in particular?
Yeah, I don't know how much it rips off Bane. Really, like I didn't get that far in Arkham City or Arkham Knight or whatever.
Oh, it doesn't.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so you're good.
Just from the start of fighting Rhino, and it's like, oh, you're not making him run into stuff. You're dropping the things on him, and
But
once
you're
you
still
figure out
making
you're
him
doing
come over to that area.
You're
so that
like
you can
you're
drop
doing the
thing on him.
so basically the bait and switch. Basically, like, oh, I'm over here, and then you like dodge out of the way and like.
It's
yeah,
slightly
slam
more
him.
exciting because
Yeah,
you're
you're
right
right,
in
for
front of
sure.
him. And plus, once you like think, oh, maybe I need to do this, and then you start doing it, and then it goes into slow motion. You know you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That moment was pretty cool.
That was cool. I did the mistake of like I released all of my Electrobots on him at the very beginning, and that does enough damage to him where you get past that first part,
Oh.
and then Scorpion shows up, and so then with Scorpion jumping around all over the place, I didn't understand what I was supposed to do to the Rhino, and so like in the confusion, I was like, this is a mess. So I had to like take Scorpion out of the picture and then figure out what I was supposed to do to Rhino in the first place.
Weird.
So it was kind of
I
weird.
went the opposite route. I took out Rhino first and then Scorpion
Yeah. Because you didn't understand what to do with Scorpion.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely liked those 2 double boss fights. Were definitely like they're tied pretty
yeah, for
much
sure.
for my favorite part because the other earlier boss fights and everything you feel more confined and it's more specific.
It feels more
mechanics.
set piecey.
Yeah, but this is more like use what you've learned, use how good you've gotten at swinging
Yeah.
Yeah.
and attacking and
Also-
dodging in midair to do this.
First of all, I was a little bit bummed out when I think it was the first objective for Act 3. It was, hey, it's Rhino and Scorpion.
Yeah.
They're out there. Go up against who you want to go up against. And then I went to both locations and you just take out their thugs, which is kind of a lame
Yeah.
objective. Like, I thought this was going to be like choose your boss fight, which I was really excited
I thought
about.
it would have been cool if they had had like, all right, here's 4 objectives. You can take out all the bosses in any order you want.
Yeah. But then also it was like getting to that point, I loved seeing Electro like flying around. Anytime I see a boss or anything in the open world itself, that's always so cool. So like swinging up on that boss fight and just seeing him zipping around, that's
Yeah.
so cool. Just it's probably some antiquated notion, but just that we have the tech to actually put the boss in the world that I've been swinging around in.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
No,
It's
I
cool.
thought that was cool.
Yeah.
I like that they do set up Electro a little bit. I mean, I know they kind of used the mechanic, but like the one where you have to take out all the electric towers, basically, and there's one on the helicopter, basically teaching you like, hit the generator first if you want to like stop
Yeah.
Electro, and then in the boss fight they don't explain it, so because you already know. Like that's a good sort of way to make the boss fight more exciting.
What about that very basic concept, which you do a fair amount in this game that we haven't talked about yet, of just shooting your webs after following like electric cables to the electricity boxes?
Oh, it's the best thing in the game.
Wait, what is this?
You know, where it's like, hey, use your spidey sense to track the electricity boxes, and then you have to shoot your webs at it to
Yeah, you
shut
have
them
to find
down.
the wiring and
okay.
then
It's, like, it's just like this small little gameplay thing that they've recurring throughout the game. That's one of those classic video game details that I guess we did a lot, but there's nothing remarkable, and I don't know if it's really necessary.
Yeah,
but
it was fine.
It added time to the clock.
fine.
Yeah.
On the combat front, real quick, we have a couple thoughts here. Cheese2B says, one of my favorite things in this game has been throwing random objects at enemies. The best object by far had to be hurling manhole covers at people like a frisbee. Those things would have taken their freaking heads off, but all they do is knock them back a bit.
Yeah.
It's funny how many boss fights even come down to like the L1, R1, chuck things at him. Even
Yeah.
Doc Ock, which we'll talk about in a bit here. I like it. There's a moment where he's like, I have no weakness. And it's like, yeah, it turns out it's L1 and R1, the thing I've been doing the
Yeah.
entire game.
I like
I
that-
also like that.
At one point, I was doing it so much that I accidentally did it after a crime had like resolved, and someone said, "Hey, he's throwing stuff around. He is a danger, like Jameson said," or something like that.
Oh no! I accidentally pressed those 2 buttons. I really like doing that too, and I really liked like ripping the turrets off of the top of the Sable trucks as well and throwing them at enemies. That was always really
I'm
satisfying.
doing that. That sounds
Really?
fun. No, I don't
That's
think I
like
took out a
the
single
only
Sable
way you
thing.
can take out the
Yeah.
Sable, the groups of Sable guys, is if you get the turrets first. For me,
Yeah.
anyway. Otherwise, they just hold you down the whole fight.
Okay. Let's see. This is Michael from Idaho. He says, what's your favorite small thing in the game? Mine is when I see a thug near a wall and spamming R1 to see them splat up against it. He says this game is his first ever platinum. Favorite small thing?
Actually, Platinum didn't make it. It was Insomniac.
That's a very funny.
Screw you, buddy.
It is always satisfying to see someone pinned up against a wall,
Yeah.
especially because it's always on the fence of like, is this actually going to pin the person with this impact web, or are they going to be invincible to it for
Right.
some weird reason? So whenever it works, yes.
Yeah.
Feels
Well,
awesome.
even if they stick right to the wall immediately, that's great. If they get all webbed up and then you punch them a couple times and punch them into a wall and then they get stuck, that's also
Yeah,
really satisfying.
for sure.
Yeah, or swing kicking them into a street
Oh, yeah.
light,
Yeah.
getting them stuck there.
That's really good.
Good stuff.
Ready for this crap, Leo? James
no.
Hicks writes in,
Oh,
your old rival.
Here we go.
Hicksadoo says, hey, did you know that if you double tap L1, you can cycle between your current and most recently used gadget?
What?
Leo has left the building, ladies and
Hey,
gentlemen.
where were you? Act 1.
Yeah, no,
James
this
Hicks?
gameflow's been going on for 3 weeks, James Hicks.
This is exactly the kind of thing Hicks would do.
Hello.
Goal Hicks. That's really great advice. Thank you.
He says he didn't know about it until the new Game Plus either, so you're not
interesting.
missing out on much. Real quick from Connor in Laramie, Wyoming. He says, hey, I want to mention that Jonah Jameson in the last act is actually a pretty good news person when he's not focused on Spider-Man. He's telling people to stay safe, and his takedowns of Sable, I think, speak to the potential of the character if only he wasn't obsessed with Spider-Man. This is actually one of my favorite things about some of the comics, where eventually in the Ultimate Continuity and more recently in the main one, but J. Jonah Jameson actually becomes a staunch ally of Spider-Man. He can still be a gruff and likable, but he's actually a better guy. Yeah, he was saying some truthful things towards the end there. But I don't know if I just didn't play enough Endgame, but I never got the thing that we thought was being foreshadowed.
Yeah, I was going to ask you guys. Yeah, I didn't
What
hear
do
that
you mean?
either.
Of him, he never said like, Spider-Man's all right. Like there was never the 180.
Oh, interesting.
That Spider-Man's like, by the end of the day, I'm gonna get you to say something nice to me.
Yeah.
Kind of. I mean, in the end, I've been
the
doing
carrot in his mouth.
Endgame stuff, and he kind of shifts in that direction, but he never like says like because he acknowledges that Spider-Man saved the city. Of like,
Oh, he does? Okay.
He 100% says that, but he attributes it to him. Of like, well, obviously, I have it from a source that Spider-Man listens to this show. So it's clear that he listened to me and has become a better person.
Oh, that's cool. I was during Act 3, I finally realized I don't really know why Jonah Jameson hates Spider-Man. Lee, if I put a gun to your head right now and ask you why that is. Why does he hate him? Does anybody know?
No, I have no idea.
Reese?
Scared of spiders.
Can you help us?
In the comics, there's like a pretty famous issue where he like has this monologue. It's like, oh, the reason I hate Spider-Man is because he's better than me, and it's like I'm jealous, basically. It's
J. Jonah Jameson jealous?
yeah, this was his middle name is J. Jealous Jameson.
Huh. That's it?
That
know.
was the reason in the comics. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, yeah, you can read it for what it is. I kind of like the idea of he's just like kind of a grumpier old dude, and he's sort of set in his ways, and like I mean, Spider-Man is connected to a lot of like destruction in the city. So
It's just
kind of like, if this guy wasn't around, he wouldn't be like causing a mess,
Yeah.
It's the way people talk about like Fortnite, They're like, oh, all the kids are playing Fortnite. Everybody thinks Fortnite's so great,
Exactly.
In this world, he's kind of the
just
Fortnite.
like Spider-Man.
Yeah.
His wife is always talking about, man, I love Spider-Man. He's like, why don't you love me the way you love Spider-Man?
These are
That's
all
my theory.
reasons. Such a dick move just to leave people hanging on a podcast. Okay, guys. What was that? Daniel writes in.
This podcast is over.
3-second pause. Anyway.
Daniel says, hey, I ended up rolling through all of Acts 2 and 3 and everything else to get 100% over the weekend. Loved it. I very rarely do this, and the feelings in my index finger the following night when I tried to pull the right trigger playing Tomb Raider attest to that. I guess the swinging was just too good. I'll make a note to hold R2 sometimes rather than pulling and releasing for each and every swing when he plays the sequel. So his finger was sore because he would just swing manually. Did you guys do that often?
Only
I don't
zip.
think I've ever had that problem.
Only zip.
Only zip everywhere.
Really?
No, that's what you do if your fingers
Oh,
in
okay.
pain.
That's true. That is helpful. Matt Clark says getting 100% took too much time. There were too many side missions. It's kind of annoying. I did not get to that point. Did anybody here get to that point?
I did 100%, yeah. It was, at one point, I think we talked about this last time, but there were too many crime missions. Like, having 5 of each type of crime to do in each section of the city is just a little overkill, in my opinion.
Yeah, I feel like they're supposed to be spontaneous events, but I think when you have to itemize them and say, like, well, I have to wait around and, for this crime to spawn, it's kind of annoying. And also, yeah, it's like, here's another fight. Like, I don't know that those are the best events, but like I feel like most of the other side stuff ends up being pretty cool. Like the backpacks have, like a nice story behind them. The pigeons are kind of cool, sort of swinging missions. Like the Taskmaster stuff can be kind of difficult, but I enjoy the challenge. So like I think the crime stuff was the only thing that I got that I haven't 100%ed the game yet, but like those are the things that I think if I get tired of the game, that'll be why.
Yeah. Real quick, Daniel Heidbrink, I should say, from Western Missouri. He says, first off, the game's freaking great, said in my best Jeff Cork impression, he said. Can anybody do a better Jeff Cork saying freaking great? Yeah, it's freaking great. Secondly, to the point below is a somewhat odd experience I've encountered while playing. While swinging around, and specifically when dropping down at higher heights, there have been a handful of times when I've literally felt my stomach drop as if I'm riding a roller coaster. Has anybody else experienced this?
A roller coaster?
Yeah, a couple times.
Not in this game. I get that in strange games. I think like Monster Hunter.
Strange games.
Like Monster Hunter World,
Okay.
it did it for me if I was falling for a long ways,
Oh,
or even
sure.
like a lot of old school games. I think if I'm just dropping randomly, then my
Sure.
stomach will
I
drop out
thought
as well.
the Infamous series was particularly good at that. I don't know if you
Really?
remember that, but they did a really good sense of like, I don't know, movement
Distance,
or momentum when
Yeah.
falling.
The only time that ever happened to me was actually in Half-Life 2 when you're on that bridge and you're kind of like going through all the railings and stuff, and I looked down and that was like the only time where like I was like, I definitely do not want to fall right now.
Yeah.
But I really do enjoy the momentum of falling and swinging and stuff. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, real quick, gameplay stuff, a little bit more. James Burkett says, it's amazing they allowed Spider-Man to change his suit at any time. In the Arkham games, you have to wait around until New Game Plus to go into other suits so that you wouldn't break immersion. Yeah, and a couple of people love the cartoon suit. They were super... Yeah, here we go. So this is...
I love the cartoon suit.
Yeah, it's
I
the
thought
best
that was
one.
too.
But-
I played a good part of it with the cartoon suit. Yeah.
Yeah, so Andrew Palomo and Carl Nielsen both absolutely love the vintage old school look for the comic book suit. It's awesome, and they even say that they want like the whole city to be cell shaded like that,
Yeah.
which is a fun idea,
That'd be
but
cool.
technically might be difficult.
Go play Ultimate Spider-Man.
Yeah, I guess that's what you need to do. But at the same time, I kept going back to just the standards of I would go to the Stark suit or I'd go to just the Insomniac suit because I didn't want to break that immersion. You know, I didn't want it to be maybe a New Game Plus. I would get freaky with
Yeah.
it, but like I didn't want some dopey looking Spider-Man in my cutscenes.
I was with you. I definitely switched to the cartoon Spider-Man after I finished the game, started doing side stuff. But until then, it was all like white suit. Until
Yeah.
basically.
There was a couple times where I would like throw on the 2099 suit, which I thought was really cool looking, and I didn't realize I had nostalgia for it. But I was like, oh, I'm Spider-Man 2099. All right.
Is that from the comics or from that old game?
It's from the comics, yeah.
No, I know, but
and
your nostalgia.
And in the game. Oh, my nostalgia? Probably from the comics. I didn't love that game that much.
Okay, gotcha. Ryan Clausen has a very good point from San Diego here. He says, while playing Spider-Man, I noticed that during certain sections, like the party scene, people are dressed like supervillains like Rhino or Mysterio. Along with this, it is established that the Twitter section in the menu, along with other world-building areas, that many people have died from attacks by these villains. Wouldn't that be like dressing up as terrorists at a Halloween party? It's a
Yeah.
weird move, right?
Oh, that is a
Yeah.
good point. I didn't even think about that.
Hey, Osama bin Laden party again, everybody. Here we go. And everyone's woo, getting drunk.
Jesus, Jerry.
I wish it was just one person and they were being like lambasted for their offensive costume.
Oh, it's like, dude, what the hell? My aunt died from it.
Yeah.
Everybody's aunt died.
Aunts aren't safe.
The Aunt Massacre.
I feed on aunts. Nathan from Roanoke, Virginia says, hey, you keep asking for granular details. Here you go. One of the coolest details I noticed in the game. Inside of the Feast Center, the main floor is a big gymnasium. If you look at the floor, the detail level is awesome. Areas near the edge of the gym are far less worn and still have a nice reflective finish that looks so realistic. In the center of the gym, where the basketball nets would be, it's far more worn, with individual pieces of wood that make up the floor being partially reflective, with edges that look very worn. It's an insane amount of attention to detail, even thinking about which sections of the floor would be more worn than others. There you go, granular detail. Thank you, Nathan.
That's
Too
cool.
granular.
Yeah,
So
come
is-
on. Just broaden out a little bit. Did you like the game or not?
Is the Feast Center supposed to be like an old high school that got converted into a homeless shelter? What is it?
I think they force the homeless to play basketball games against each other to figure out who gets
Hell
the
yeah.
resources
I
each
get it
week.
now, yeah.
Nathan also says, as far as the story goes, I loved it overall, but anyone else thinks Silver Sable changed her tune way too quickly. I thought she'd be pissed Spider-Man failed and was beaten by Octavius. Her line of, you can repay me by not dying, was particularly strange, as minutes before she was ready to shoot him in an instant.
Yeah, that turn was super weird. Like her character becoming like, oh, I guess Spider-Man's all right after trying to kill him like seconds before.
It seemed like they were like, we got to get her off the board.
Yeah.
I think in interviews with Brian Hitler, he talked about how originally she had a much bigger role, obviously, and then of all the people to whittle down, she was one that got short shrift.
I was also frustrated because like they have a conversation after that whole mission of like, all right, Spider-Man, I guess you're cool now. My guys are still gonna try to kill you anyway. 'Cause,
Yeah.
I don't know. They're not gonna listen to me.
Right.
And then like they don't remove the Sable people at all, even though like there's no reason for them to continue shooting you. Like I thought that was just a weird
Yeah.
like handoff. Well, we're not gonna do that. So it's like
They could have just not addressed it at all. Honestly.
Yeah.
It would have been fine. It's like, yeah, it's a video game. This stuff's going to keep happening if I want to keep
yeah, it's a weird thing to say. Well, now that you bring it up, it's totally clashing with the game. But like if you hadn't mentioned it,
That
Yeah,
is
if you
weird.
hadn't
Good
brought
point,
it up,
Silver
yeah.
Sable.
Yeah.
I did like before that moment though, you know, when Spider-Man's trying to take out, I think it's demons outside the tower. I forget. And there's still demons around. They never go
I think
away.
they're demons, yeah.
But then the Sable police come jetpacking around. He's like, what is this, 1984 or something? But I like the push and pull of like, whose side are you on now? Like all these conflicting armies kind of getting together and just trying to square the alliances in my mind is kind of fun.
Yeah.
And I think Spider-Man even does my favorite thing where he keeps emphasizing to them, like, we are on the same team. Like, just stop shooting at me for a little bit. And we can take care of this whole situation.
Yeah.
It's fun to try and figure out. But Damon's also pissed here, writing in saying, did I seriously not get to fight Sable after getting dumped on by her goons throughout the entire game?
I was also disappointed by that. I was like, come on, no fight.
Yeah.
Come on.
Some idiot actually on this table thought that Sable was going to be the final boss.
Nice.
Instead of
that,
DLC like
yeah.
she'd been announced to be.
I texted these guys before we started playing. I'm like, I haven't played anymore, but just trying to guess the final boss and how people say it's a surprise. What if it's Sable? I didn't ask it as a question. I said, it is 100% going to be Sable, and I'll cut my pinky off if it's not.
People said the last
Here you
boss was
go.
a surprise.
No, but I think people phrased, and I saw some conversation about people talking about the final act being surprising. And also, I don't really see it that much, but I heard some people talking about like, oh, it kind of walks into a more political discussion, talking about the militarization of police. So I was expecting more on that front, but it's like,
What? Yeah.
I
I
didn't hear
mean,
that.
besides the
Word
fact
about
that like at some point the police more or less becomes Sable, and it's like
That's it.
military
Yeah.
checkpoints and stuff. But I don't think it ever. Like, it kind of does that implicitly, but I don't think it ever explicitly says, like, Spider-Man never walks out and says, military police are bad, guys.
Yeah.
It's
Well, there's
no
some
good.
mercenary group though too. It's not. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the idea, the imagery of, like, checkpoints and things like that can sort of, like...
Sure.
Those-
Wait, what
those-
is this? 1984?
Hey, what is this, a video game? All these checkpoints. Doug from Burlington, Vermont says, just finished. That was wicked. Is it just me, or was that the best Spider-Man movie I've ever seen? Who created the story? Marvel, Insomniac? Who's responsible for this? That's a great question.
John Paquette.
Lead writer John Paquette. Did you meet him on the cover story trip?
No, he was on vacation, but he called in, so we did like a phone call interview.
And
while
he's
we
an
were there.
Insomniac employee?
Yeah.
Okay. So he's been there for a while. Do you know? He's not like a Marvel hire or anything crazy like that?
I don't know for sure.
Okay.
Presumably they had some like input from Marvel, right?
I think so, yeah. Listening to, I devoured every spoiler cast I could with Brian Intihar, which were very fun. I think Kind of Funny had the best one if you're interested in checking those out. But I was shocked listening to interviews just how much of a collaboration this was. He pitches it very much as like, it's this crazy three-way collaboration between Sony, Marvel, and Insomniac. But I definitely assumed that Sony was kind of leading the show, but in his mind, it definitely seemed like Insomniac and Marvel got together,
Oh, really?
and then Sony helped like push it over the finish line to make it happen in a big way, probably with a bigger budget and all this stuff. But yeah, I was shocked. Even the way he was framing it, talking about, this game, we see it in our minds as the Iron Man of Marvel gaming. Like we want to get out in a big way and kind
Yeah.
of set the standard. And I didn't really see it as separate from Sony in that way, but I think it's more so than you think in your mind.
That's interesting. Well, I don't know. So is he thinking that Insomniac would do other non-Spider-Man related?
I don't know if I
Marvel
go
projects?
that far, but it definitely, listen to those interviews, it made me think, I don't know if it's 1,000% ruled out that Marvel isn't building some bigger universe. The idea that the Avengers wouldn't acknowledge Spider-Man
That'd
in
be
some way.
Cool. I mean, presumably if Marvel has all the rights to that, because it's a completely different development team, different publisher.
Right, but if
That
Marvel's still
Activision game.
the main licensee, like maybe they would be able to tie
Or-
those together in a subtle way.
Sorry, no, it's Square who has
Right.
it, right? Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, I could totally see them sort of, maybe after the Square thing, just sort of contracting with studios that they think are good. Like here, hey, we're going to make one with, Microsoft and Ninja Theory or something like, and like try, I think the sort of their attempts to build a universe is more about like, we just want to have like a consistent world where, Marvel characters are in good games.
Yeah.
Right. And
That'd be great.
Kale from Colchester says, are there any games or any Marvel characters you would like to see wrapped into this universe if it is one shared thing?
I mean, I think Iron Man would be pretty cool.
Yeah, do Iron Man right finally. He hasn't really had any good video games.
But he'll be in the Avengers game,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, doesn't mean you don't want to see him solo, right?
I
Like
don't
I'd
know.
love to
I
see
wouldn't
like
want
a
it
good
wasted on
Thor
him.
game, but
Who would you pick then?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
You're asking me.
I am asking you right now.
I like Doctor Strange. I'd like to see some freaky powers, and I don't
I mean
think it's
he's gonna be in the Avengers game.
Oh wait, that hurts when you're talking about Hey, come on, man. But just on the story front overall, in terms of like, hey, who the hell wrote this thing? That is the biggest surprise. I think even on this podcast before, I was a little bit skeptical about the writing in this game. I thought it was going to be video game superhero level, which isn't a high bar in my mind. But throughout, the writing has been so much better than I thought. It's just the quips, dialogue, the emotional moments, like they hit it out of the park. Not quite, I don't think, to like a God of War level of writing, which I think might be the high water mark this year for me, but still
Sure.
super, super solid.
Yeah, it was really. I would say it's definitely above average. Did a really good bar, and like I had fun with it, and there were some cool like twists. I don't know if you want to get into the. For me,
We
like
have
there
so
was
much
a
to get into.
moment
Let's do it.
where Mary Jane, that stealth sequence in Osborn's mansion.
Yes.
Which I still wasn't a fan of the gameplay, but like that story wise, I was like, oh, this is kind of cool with Harry, and like it turns out there's more going on here than we thought with
Yeah.
him not being in Europe.
Yes, absolutely. That is huge. A lot of people wrote in about that. Wald Chikawa writes in saying, I really enjoyed navigating Norman's apartment. Don from Albuquerque, New Mexico says, Gah! Finding that damn key in Norman Osborn's apartment drove me nuts. I had laser focus on finding a calendar or code. When I flipped the photo of Harry's mom around the first 2 times, I didn't even see the key at all. My spidey sense wasn't cutting it. And Kale says, the MJ stealth bits made me groan in general. And Kel says, I think the next game, an LA Noire style investigative dialogue mechanic would be so much better for MJ.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But I agree that, when she gets like the taser and like working her way out of the apartment or even in, I'm still not crazy about those sequences, but it turns out when you're just walking around unraveling a story that's interesting, like that entire sequence was, figuring out what's going on with Harry, that's all you need. And that was, I think, the strongest part for MJ throughout the entire game.
It's funny because I also took a little time to find the key, but I spent so much time just looking at random stuff in the apartment that I think the game eventually just tells you where that stuff is. Because I spent so much time there, it's like, hey, go to this, like an objective marker popped up that, hey, it's in this room. And when I looked at the picture for the first time, it says, hey, I think something might be on the back. And I immediately flipped it around. And there was the key. It was so. I guess I'm surprised that like he had trouble finding the key. When for me, it was just like immediate of like, hey, there's a key in the back of this thing. The first time I ever held it. So.
Yeah. Connor from Wyoming also writes in just saying MJ's sequence near the end in Norman's apartment floored me. Though more for the series of story revelations that she encountered. Harry, oh my God. And then Evan Filarca says, well, I can't wait for Peter to continue to mentor Miles through the use of his arachnid abilities. Nothing made me freak out more than having the game reveal that Harry was never in Europe in the first place, but rather in a preserved status in Norman's penthouse throughout the entirety of the game with a symbiote-like substance wrapped around him in order to keep him alive. That, plus the massive foreshadowing of Norman turning into Green Goblin with hints of Goblin glider, Goblin mask, helmet, which I love that Mary Jane put that on. Like, that's such a cool idea. Pumpkin bombs scattered throughout the game, and the green water casting a very sinister shadow over Norman's face leads him to believe that we're in for a very exciting follow-up to this already breathtaking game. Thank you for everything, Spidey Squad.
I mean, I always find it a little bit corny when they're like, oh, here, I'm really into this purple and green color scheme. Like, that always seems like the most obvious sort of hinting. But I do appreciate that, like, yeah, they're going maybe a slightly different direction with Harry specifically. I will say that, when the spider broke out of the containment, there was like a split second in my mind. It's like, wait, is Mary Jane going to get bitten by a spider in this? And that was like my happiest moment of like, that would be such a huge shift for this. And then 10 seconds, I was like, oh, wait, no, it's going to bite. Like, she's going to take it over to Miles.
Dylan
I mean,
from
that was the biggest, you could see that coming from a mile away.
Yeah, Dylan from North Carolina says, part of me is really disappointed that MJ was not the one bitten by the spider.
Exactly.
I know Miles has a history of being Spidey, but by the end of the game, I love MJ and thought she was a total badass.
Especially since I think it would have played into the arc of like the reason they broke up is because like I'm tired of you protecting me. So like the idea of like, okay, now I'm also a spider person, I think would have been.
And if that was her line of dialogue, that'd be killer.
I am also a spider
Kicks
person.
down Harry Peter's door and says, now I am a spider person.
Okay, we have a lot to unpack here. I loved that idea of sneaking around that place so much as MJ and then having it revealed post-credits that like she was so close to Harry. That is such a cool, unnerving idea.
I hadn't
she
thought
was
about
less than a foot away from Harry during that entire sequence.
I
That's so
knew there was
creepy.
somebody in that container.
Really? Why?
Yeah, you could like barely hear something, but it was like
Shut
it was,
What?
you didn't like hear someone talking or anything, but it was like just a little gurgling or whatever. I was like, oh, there's someone in there.
Did you assume it was Mark Hamill? Like what?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Am I the only one? Am I the only that was so stupid that during that post-credits thing, when like he puts his little hand on the tank, in a very Star Trek 2 situation or whatever, and then like the symbiote hand or whatever comes up and touches it. Did you guys all understand that was a symbiote?
I that was like my first instinct of like, wait, is there some other like did Harry at some point encounter some sort of other symbiote thing? But that's what it has to be, right?
Right. Leo, you're not that glued into lore either. Am I nuts? I thought it was like, oh, it's a weird hand. And then it wasn't until listening to the spoiler cast, like, oh, that was supposed to be a Venom tease. I see. I didn't get that at all.
Yeah, I didn't get that either. It makes sense, but it's not like explicitly laid out if you're not familiar with Spider-Man, I don't think. It was just like, oh yeah, it's something that really weird is going on with Harry.
Yeah.
Even if you don't get it, you're like, oh, this is kind of messed up. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. So what should we have taken away from that, Reese? Spider-Man fan number 1?
I was a little turned off by it just because I don't know, it's like so messing with the traditional lore.
Isn't that the fun though? Like I love that.
Guess I don't know. There's certain things that just turn me off, and the idea of like the Venom suit coming from. They had to do something other than what it was because Spider-Man got the Venom suit out of a vending machine like in space. So they weren't going to probably go that route. But
Are you sure?
the fact that, I don't know.
Maybe this is safer than doing what they did, honestly.
I feel like a recurring theme of this series might be sort of conflicts within the villains themselves instead of them all sort of being against Spider-Man. So I'd be interested to see if maybe they set up the next game as Harry resenting Norman and sort of that being the conflict of like the symbiote versus Green Goblin. in the next game.
Yeah.
I think that'd be
Oh,
pretty
that's
cool.
interesting.
I guess I was a little turned off because I was like, oh, but Eddie Brock's supposed to be Venom. Like, I kind of wanted that. And maybe they'll still go that way in the sequel, but
Maybe you'll fight. So it's just guaranteed that he's Venom? Does it have to be Venom, or can it just be another symbiote that has like a new name
Carnage.
or something like
it doesn't have to be
the,
Venom.
the
No.
Hob Venom or something?
Hob Venom, yeah, exactly. That's probably
The
what it is.
anti-venom.
Oh, I can't believe I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it is cool that Green Goblin and Venom weren't really in this game, right?
Yeah.
So 2 of his biggest villains are still up for grabs in the sequel, which is kind of a cool setup. You know, it's like, oh, plus Mysterio or like Kraven. Like, there's a bunch of like cool villains we haven't seen yet, even
For
though
sure.
there were so many in this game.
Yeah, they have more than enough to work with for sure. Also, just that idea. I think it's people on the street who said something along the lines of Osborn's screwed. Like, you know, the fact that Devil's Breath got released, like he's never going to win the next election, or he'll be kicked out of office or something. So I like that idea of him getting stripped of his mayorship and kind of down on his luck, and then
Yeah.
blaming Spider-Man.
Oh,
or
yeah.
however it works. Jack White, your fan from Utah, thank you, Jack White, says, did you guys notice the clues that hint at Norman Osborn knowing who Spider-Man's true identity is? Like Aunt May and Dr. Octavius, I think Norman knows who Spider-Man is. The primary clue is how involved Norman is in the life of Peter. In the franchise, Norman sees himself as a father figure to Peter and acts like one. If Aunt May and Doc Ock can figure out who Spider-Man really is, a billionaire mayor from New York City with multiple files on the masked menace who is overly involved in the life of his son's orphan friend would have figured it out too. Other clues like personal stand-down orders to Silver Sable to prevent her from killing the spider, or scenes where they cut off Mayor Osborn confronting the web slinger, lead me to believe that Insomniac Games has a more mature, complex story to tell about the Goblin.
Sure. That's how Gwen Stacy died in the comics, is Norman found out who Peter really was, Spider-Man, and then went after his girlfriend.
Is that what it is?
Yeah,
Okay.
so-
Also, I don't know. I would imagine a push and pull is for the sequel, Doc Ock kind of, I don't know about reuniting, but like talking again to Osborn, because their interactions are so good. And the idea of that final shot of Otto, he knows, and now he's pissed, right? Like he knows who Spider-Man
Yeah.
really is. And so he has this juicy secret. For dramatic purposes, he has to tell somebody who more interesting than his greatest rival, right?
Well, that was a scene I really liked in Homecoming. To compare it to that is
Yeah.
like the Vulture found out who he was,
Yep.
but Peter also saved his family, and so he kind of like feels like he owes him one. It's like, no, I don't know who he is, but he has that secret which could come up at any time. Like he has that trick card, he could play.
I guess it's that same thing. Yeah.
And with this, I don't know that Doc Ock has the same like motivation to keep it a secret. So
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
could kind of go any direction for a sequel. I'm
I-
kind of curious to see like, will he keep it a secret?
Yeah, that scene in particular, I think, was really well done, of him like sort of bouncing between sort of pleading and sort of like blackmailing him, and then like Spider-Man immediately saying like, "Well, you can do whatever you want, man. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
gonna let you do that to me."
Yes.
Like if you want to tell people, like go for it. Like,
Right.
it's a really good scene.
Yeah, for sure. I think that that entire sequence was incredible, and I think it speaks volumes. The amount of email we got specifically about Doc Ock, like people love that Doc Ock storyline and his voice acting and implementation throughout the game.
I thought it was a cool portrayal of that character.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
And you know everything.
That's right.
Um,
Period.
Real quick, maybe before we get to all that Doc Ock stuff, or we can reverse a little bit. What do you guys think about Lee and Mr. Negative's final boss fight and stuff? We haven't really addressed that yet.
I'm happy they brought him back. I thought last episode I said like I was kind of disappointed that they sort of sidelined him for for Doc Ock, but I like that he comes back and has a pretty interesting last boss fight.
Yeah.
Like the fight isn't like my favorite, but I
it's
thought-
basically just waiting for Triangle to pop up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
it was
I
the
thi-
most forgettable of the third act. For
Yeah.
sure.
Oh, really?
But I think
I
it's
actually like that fight.
It's an interesting send off for the character. Like this is the boss fight like that. Even if it's not the best one, I feel like this is the boss fight he deserved in terms of like giving him a big finale versus the one before that.
Yeah. Okay, Joseph de Maria has a couple thoughts. To go back up just a little bit more, he says, hey, when you're playing as MJ infiltrating Norman's penthouse, a couple things caught my eye. First is how the spiders, at least the ones that crawled on MJ, were numbered. I immediately pictured Norman getting a bunch of scientists together and trying to label all these spiders, and how eventually the spiders would molt off their skin and no longer be numbered. More importantly, however, there is
They're
no
tattoos.
Well, the one that bites Miles, it has like a U on it, right? Did I see that correctly? Is that like an Ultimate
It
reference?
used to be a 10, and it just molted off.
Oh, I see.
Actually, I don't know, because I think they were numbered in the Ultimate Comics.
Okay.
too. So, but I don't know why it's a U.
I think it was a number. Did we all say a U?
I saw
a
a U.
number.
Well,
I don't
use a
recall.
number in some ways.
Oh, sure.
It's like a Roman thing. Anyways, this person says, more importantly, however, there is no toilet in Norman's bathroom. Now,
What?
admittedly, there is a toilet in Harry's bathroom in the apartment, but why would there not be one in Norman's? Who builds a bathroom without a toilet?
Well, if you examine the environment, you can find poop all over the floor.
Sorry,
Little
Norman, I gotta
gob-
wake you up. I gotta use your bathroom again.
It's like a Murphy bed. You gotta pull it out.
Oh, I see. Little goblin pellets.
Murphy toilet.
Okay, Joseph really gets to it, though, saying, overall, this is really the best story in any Marvel video game. Probably true. When I heard that Martin Lee escaped after attacking Oscorp, I thought there'd be a big moment during the final fight that Martin would show up and help Peter beat Doc Ock. I know he's a villain, but Insomniac said they took some liberties, and I was hoping that would be one of them. Did you guys think about that, or is it just like, Mr. Negative's defeated, goodbye?
No, I thought he was done.
yeah.
There was a lot of confusion, which is surprising to me, that mirrored James from Dublin here is saying, hey, so when the City Hall bombing takes place, we're going back to Act 1 for this, I'm
Okay.
sorry. And Peter's Spidey sense, trademark, goes off. He turns around to see what's setting it off. He spots a guy getting out of a car while turning into a demon. Then, still in Peter's point of view, the camera pans to the left to reveal Martin Lee turning negative. The camera just whip pans right again to focus on a third guy on the City Hall steps. There's no reaction shot from Peter, no audio line, no change of music. The camera doesn't even focus on Lee for literally more than 2 seconds. It happened so fast that I genuinely wasn't even certain it was him, because surely the game wouldn't skip over such a significant reveal. Then after all the cutscenes are said and done, there's a phone call between Peter and MJ, and they're discussing the plan of action for taking Lee down. Was there a missing scene? What's happening here? Other people wrote in about that, about like, when did they reveal that Lee was negative? What's happening?
Right.
Yeah.
I thought that was weird too. Well, I don't know. Comic fans obviously knew he was Mr. Negative, but the characters, I was like, how did they find out it was him? Like, you would think they would have had a conversation, like, holy crap, he's Mr. Negative. You know, like
Yeah.
a recognition of that.
Right, and I wonder if it's connected maybe. You know, he talks about, was there a cutscene? I'm sure it's reworked 10 Ways to Sunday and stuff, but I wonder if it is connected to the fact that in the E3 demo, remember, the reveal is through that helicopter window. Remember? And that might be a more momentous thing that they then tweaked in some way, but there's some remnant in there of a change of the reveal. But Dan Dinkler, Mr. Dinkler, says, you'll never believe this,
Try me.
Or will I?
but I watched Sinister 2 the same
Don't believe
night.
it. Nope.
I don't know. I watched Sinister 2 the same night as playing the Mary Jane segment where she watches that disturbing video of Lee getting his powers. Needless to say, it freaked me out. Anybody else think that was scary? I don't know what Sinister 2 is.
I don't know what that is either.
Neither do I.
Yeah, I don't believe
Is that
him.
from the
I don't think
producers
it's
of
real.
Insidious?
I'll say yes. That sounds about right. I don't know anything about that. But did you guys find that scene scary? When Lee's getting his powers and killing his parents and all that stuff?
That I found it was shocking when his parents like blew up into goop.
Yeah.
Right.
I found that more shocking than like the
Yeah.
bombing earlier or anything.
Yeah,
It's like,
I found it shocking
what?
that Osborn 2 would have that VHS just sitting there ready to hit play. Gotta watch this one again.
In case
Freeze
somebody wants to
framing through
incriminate
it.
me later.
Sinister 2 is a kind of weirdo horror movie.
Oh.
So
from the producers of Insidious.
that's right.
Isn't it weird though that I think it was in the last episode, I think I made a joke talking about Mary Jane's Sinister 2 being broken bottles and cardboard. And I said the word Sinister 2 as a joke.
Oh, really?
I think so.
Well,
Freak
geez.
out, you guys. Hazal Mohammed, friend of the show, says, hey, I'm still unsure about the Otto-Lee connection established in Act 2, since Otto's in the room with Norman when Lee accidentally kills his parents with his powers. There's a part in Otto's hideout where Lee thanks Otto for working on a cure for Lee's condition. So maybe that's enough severance for causing Lee to kill his parents? It still feels tenuous. Like, why does he blame Osborn so much? But Otto's like, you're cool, man. I'll work kind of alongside you.
I hadn't thought of that. That's interesting.
Yeah, maybe there's more details there that we didn't
I
quite
assume
see.
Otto could have been on the side of, well, I hate Norman too. Come on, I didn't have anything to do with
Or
that.
it's
Let's
like,
get
I feel
Norman.
bad for you.
Yeah.
Was Otto there at the time?
Yeah, that's what he's saying.
Oh, okay. I don't
Yeah.
remember that.
Apparently he's
Seeing
in
that.
the background or something.
Yeah.
I didn't see it either. But and then Hazal also says, Otto having a hideout not known to Peter also feels tenuous because that means Otto's always been a bad egg since he's been planning this event before the neural chip causes him to go mad, which makes the hallucination sequence between Peter and Otto ring hollow since we as the player are being told that Otto's never been the good man that Peter is currently attempting to rectify while under Scorpion's venom. But maybe that's just me.
I wish that was the story. I wish the neural chip was not even a part of it.
Same here.
Yeah, I wish
He
he was
was
just
secretly bad the whole time.
yeah, or like he had these motivations that turned him bad, and
Well,
the neural chip
yeah.
just like weakens that.
Do you think
to
that
me.
the hideout proves that or helps that
Yeah.
theory?
First, certainly, yeah.
Okay. Because I was still confused about, like, he pulled the chip out at the end, but it wasn't like the night and day cartoon light switch
Oh,
flipping
yeah.
on
It's not
and
like
off.
he was immediately. Yeah, exactly.
So there is still some evil in his heart, no matter
I mean,
what.
do you think that he used the chip as an excuse to like, because it feels like they do imply, but I wonder if like maybe Osborn was just sort of blaming that on the idea. Like if he was just sort of saying, "Oh, it's the chip that's making me do it," but I already know that I'm bad.
I would be into that, but yeah, like the dramatically taking the chip out makes it certainly feel like the story is not trying to do that.
Yeah. And then he also says the final battle between Peter and Otto was okay, but I did dig the reveal that Otto knew that Peter was Spider-Man, since you can hear him confirm the fact while Peter is hallucinating while under Scorpion's venom. It's uttered twice. It was a neat touch for those paying attention during that sequence. So when it comes up during the final battle, it's not as big of a surprise as it could be, but actually a hidden fear of Peter. I like that idea too, that like, even though Peter acts shocked, he's like, you know, and he was so mad that the hallucination tips a little bit or hints that in Peter's mind he suspects that he actually knows.
Yeah.
That's a fun idea.
I will say that like gameplay wise, that I don't know, it's kind of hard for me to reconcile that like here's someone who's been a scientist most of his life, doesn't look like he like, you know, like is just like a bodybuilder or anything. For the number of punches that guy took was just kind of a little high.
The robot arms
must have been
change
high.
your skin
Makes it
makeup
tougher.
or something. But on that on the hallucination thing, I did like, in theory, even though it feels, and a lot of people wrote in about this, obviously, that it feels very Scarecrow. I did like the idea of it revealing a little bit more. Like, I like Otto has a couple good lines where he's screaming. He goes, "You are the poison, Peter. Everything you touch suffers." And then there's that moment where he's like, "I bet your Uncle Ben jumped in front of the bullet." He's like, "I would have jumped in front of the bullet if I was Uncle Ben." And then Spider-Man
Oh,
has
I missed that. That's wow. That's
it's cool.
deep,
And Spider-Man
man.
has some line where he's like, he said, "I'd rather I'm sorry, that's Scorpion that says that." Because then Spider-Man says, "I think I'd rather fight the real Scorpion than my subconscious."
Oh,
fun
that's
idea.
a good line.
Yeah.
I don't know if I didn't like that hallucination scene that much because it did feel. I know we talked about this earlier, and I said it wasn't that much like Arkham, but
Yes.
this scene in particular did feel a bit like Arkham to me, and I was like,
including like the Lee fight, because that also has like the trippy thing. It's like,
Yeah.
this is a lot of weird abstract environments, which normally I'm down for, but it's surprising in Act 3 to come swinging in with all these.
yeah, maybe just they needed one of them.
Although the giant arms coming through the background was really sweet.
That was cool.
That looked really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Somebody had a very good point, and it went a little something like this. This is Nathan saying, if Spider-Man is still able to navigate the city lab during this hallucination, how is he fighting a boss fight and not destroying the lab? Like, where was he physically when he
Oh,
was
that's a good
fighting that
point.
boss?
It would have been cool if he came to and like the lab was just destroyed.
Half of New York was destroyed. But this
He's
is
beating the crap out of some homeless dude.
this is Nathan's best point, though. He says, why would anyone at Insomniac create a hallucination level with Spider-Man and use Scorpion instead of Mysterio?
Yeah, I
They didn't have the
that's
budget
weird.
to do both, man.
Or
couldn't
they
put
just
Mysterio
didn't have
this
him
game.
in the game. I guess I don't know.
But they hinted that he already fought Mysterio. I would bet. I mean, Brian Intihar has said, like, hey, we had to cut a lot out of this game. A lot of bosses had to go. I bet that at least maybe like this tech or some of the environment concept art was originally tied to Mysterio. It has to be. It
That would
feels,
make a lot of sense.
It
Yeah.
would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, because just the idea of, like, oh, it's some poison. Now everything's
that's
weird.
Yeah, Scorpion's never. He has a poison sting, but it's never like made hallucinations. You know.
Right. Thomas Wilson said it reminded him a lot of Infinity War and some of the trippy stuff of Infinity War, seeing like inside Thanos' mind and stuff. And James Hicks, this. Relax, Leo, relax. James, you're safe. You're safe. You can't come through your earbuds, I promise. No. James Hicks writes in. The nerve of this guy.
Let's hear it.
He says, the part where Scorpion poisons Spider-Man and he hallucinates the green flood around New York City surely has to be a PS1 reference, right?
That's what I was reminded of for sure.
Oh, really?
Was that original game? Yeah.
What's the idea? Because it's all like foggy down there and you can't go down? Or what's the...
Yeah. It's just covered in fog.
Okay, that's cool. Grim Feather says the Streets of Poison mission
It's
stand
not
out...
green though.
Yeah, I looked at it too. It wasn't green. Stand out as a highlight of Act 3 for me. I usually don't enjoy dream sequences in games, but the active role the player takes in the sequence and the platforming-esque gameplay kept me engaged in the exposition and made Spidey's quest to stop Otto feel even more personal. It was kind of like right before the finale, a nice reminder of kind of walking through the relationship. Just in case, I'd imagine you had done a bunch of side quests of, hey, here's who Otto was, just to remind
Yeah.
you a little
Remember,
bit.
you liked him.
Here's how you parkour, by the way. You hold R2 and it helps you run across platforms. That was weird. That's a video game problem, but I was like, man, I wish I wasn't saying this right now.
Right.
Like, this is just taking me out of it.
Although
Or at least give me a few seconds to try it on my own before you tell me to do it.
Although I was trying to swing, I think I might be that idiot that needed that help because I forgot about the part where you have to like hold L2 to like aim specifically.
Oh, sure.
I just did that so few times that I died several times in that sequence, not knowing that I
really?
had to change it
All
up.
right.
Because it's like
Thanks
there's a
for
prompt on
ruining
the
it for
screen, but I can
everybody.
ignore it, I guess. Here's a great question. Cade Marks from Chandler, Arizona says, hey, in the conversation immediately following the end of Act 2, Spider-Man and Yuri talk on the phone about how Spider-Man left the hospital before he had finished healing. This struck me as strange because how could he be treated in the hospital without his suit being removed?
Yeah.
And does that mean Yuri knows his identity? They never reference this in conversation or later in the game. Then later in Act 3, when Peter is brought back to Feast to have his injuries treated, they never remove his suit. This detail really bothered me.
I like the idea of someone at a hospital like writing patient names, Spider-Man.
They had the outfit where he's like in his underwear with
Yeah.
the mask on. They could have used that at the very least.
Yeah, just put that model in there.
I don't know. It would have been kind of fun to like have, even if you don't want to like model the hospital and all that, to have like a shot of him in like in a gown or something with his mask still on, just to be like acknowledged, like, all right, we respected his identity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been good.
Because I
Yeah.
feel like when they were bringing him into Feast, I felt like that scene was coming of like, do we remove his mask or like?
Yep.
I thought that was coming, and they just completely sort of like
100%.
sidestepped that conversation.
It would have been a cool moment to see them like
like they
grapple
all
with that.
kind of quietly agreeing of like, nah, let's not do it.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Let's just try and shove like respirators like up his little nose in the suit.
Yeah.
I love that scene right before it though. I thought that animation was incredible of just like Doc Ock beating the crap out of Spider-Man. That's like some of the most impactful animation of the game. Of even though it was a cutscene, of just holy God, is he getting the crap beat out of him? There's like a pool of blood underneath him afterwards. It was wild
Yeah.
looking.
It was cool looking. That was close to when Miles got bit, right?
No,
No, it wasn't?
That's towards the end.
Okay.
Yeah,
For
this
some
was
reason, I was
over
thinking
before
like,
that.
oh my gosh, I wonder if he's going to be out of commission for a while, and then Miles is going to jump in.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, maybe you'd seen the spider at that point, so maybe
I think
that's why you
had,
thought of
and
it.
you're like, all right,
Yeah.
the spider bites come in, blah blah blah.
One of the most impactful moments for me emotionally, which was immediately undercut by them not taking the suit off and just like doing a quick fade to black, and then he was back up and running around. But I love that scene when MJ ran into Feast and saw him like on the table, like
Yeah.
covered in blood, and she has the best delivery where she just goes like, "Oh my God." That's all she says, and it's such an amazing performance. Just this little line, that's all she had to say. And I was like, oh, this is the scene where I'm going to be destroyed. And then, nope, fade to black, everything's fine.
Yeah,
Okay,
they
let's
could
move
have
on.
milked you a little bit more. Come on, guys.
Milk me.
Milk me.
Hey,
Like
video
a
game.
mother spider. There was another scene with right after Miles goes and gets to the water and he comes back and they're having a heart to heart, and then Spider-Man leaves and he's like, wait, are you Spider-Man's girlfriend? And he's like, oh,
Yeah.
that's cool. I was like, oh, that's kind of a fun little exchange.
It's also
Right.
weird that Miles doesn't recognize Peter's voice.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
That is a big recurring theme is what the hell is wrong with Miles? Surely everybody knows, because it certainly seems like everybody knows.
Yeah.
A series of back-to-back scenes of Spider-Man. You knew? How is it possible? You knew too? I thought I was being pretty hidden and clever. Do you guys want to talk about Miles? Too bad. Rag from
No.
Rag from Braintree, England.
Okay.
What? England. Braintree.
Is that a
Come
real
on.
place?
I don't know. Is that a reference to Isaac Newton? Because that apple fell on him and then
Oh, yeah.
he used his
it's
brain
gotta
under
be,
the
right?
tree. He says, hey, GI crew, just a really quick observation. I'm sure you noticed anyways. Back in part 1 of the game club, Reeves mentioned that Miles' power include camouflaging himself and paralyzing people temporarily. Well, when MJ is going through Norman's secret lab, if you interact with the spider cages, she mentions how the labels on them say optical camouflage and bioelectrokinesis. Now, this is obviously your usual dose of fake scientific mumbo-jumbo, but it definitely sounds like Miles' power. And sure enough, he was bitten by one of those spiders.
That's a good detail.
Yeah, Alex from Salt Lake City says Mary sneaks into Oscorp, finds a hidden room, bumps into a glass container of spiders. They crawl all over her, so she stands to brush them off. One remains without her knowing. The spider then survives and hangs on as MJ jumps off a building, gets saved by Peter, and makes it all the way to Feast, where it lands on a conveniently placed box that's picked up by Miles. And the moment he picks up the box, spider bite.
I also thought it was a little weird. I thought maybe the spider should have like crawled into a case or something she had, and then it was trapped in the case.
Her
and, like,
mouth.
Yeah, or her mouth.
Without her
Oh,
noticing.
a spider! Shove it in my mouth. For
Oh,
a
wait, hold
minute.
on. Let me pick it out of my teeth.
That's what's so weird about that sequence is it's like such a like specific series of hoops it's jumping through to get to Miles
Yeah.
being bitten, which is the obvious thing that we know is going to happen.
Right.
I mean, couldn't they have worked some other way for the story for Miles to have just been there or something? I don't know.
Miles did that stealth sequence.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, no, it would have to be MJ because of the Harry connection. Because she was like, "Oh my God, Harry, where's Miles?" He'd be like, "Who's this
Well,
Harry?"
maybe
twerp?"
have them both there. I don't know.
But you can't control both at once.
That's a good point.
And even on a practical level, there's no way Mary Jane would have not noticed there was a spider on her for that long.
giant spider.
And tried to.
Has she ever been bit?
Not that I know of him in like the main continuity of the series.
Really?
She did
Wow.
get spider powers once when like everybody in New York got spider powers. But you know, that's That's all.
That little weird thing that
That's
happened.
all.
But like you could have had like Miles and Mary Jane there, and then Miles could have got bitten and then maybe fainted or something. And then Mary Jane was like, "Oh, I got to deal with this and this," and like there's
Yeah.
a bunch of like Sable guys.
Throw him
coming
off
in
the
at
building
me.
too.
Yeah,
You're welcome
and
to
then-
just cut this part of the podcast and send it to Insomniac as your job
Yeah,
application.
come on, Brian.
Yeah. Don't you
I'm
understand?
an
I'm
IT
saying these
guy.
sentences. Why weren't they doing
Why
it?
aren't these in the game? I do like when people do that online. I'm like, come on, guys, you didn't make the game.
Right. Do you want to have a comment for yourself then?
Come on, dude. Come on.
This curly hair dude is annoying.
I thought that was a bold
Blowhard.
move, and I didn't really understand where MJ was going when she's like, "Where are you, Peter? I need you. There's people with guns on me on the roof. I'm gonna jump for it." And Spider-Man's very clearly like, "No, don't do it. I'm not quite there
Yeah.
yet." And she's like, "See ya." And she goes for it.
You're
and then
up.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
and he catches her, which is very sweet and all that stuff because they have the cute little line where it's like,
I would have
"You're
liked
crazy.
to have seen
You're
her
amazing."
hit the pavement.
Yeah.
And then Peter was like, "No."
But he clearly said he wasn't ready, and she went for
That's
it. It's like,
true.
that actually got me just on the tension level. Like, he said it. He said it, and you weren't listening. This is going to be a nightmare.
They're
It
gonna kill
reminded
Mary
me of
Jane
Back
right
to the
now.
Future too. I think
Yeah.
that's the first time
Stacy.
I ever saw that. Like a dude up against a wall and like, "Oh, I got to jump off this building now."
Yes. And then the DeLorean picked MJ up, which I thought was a
That's
bold
what I was
move.
hoping for. Yeah.
What's better than that? That's
The
just the
DeLorean?
best thing you could do in fiction is have somebody jump off a building and then slowly rise up.
And then
Yeah.
come back. It's really good. It was really good.
In fact, at my funeral, just insist on bringing like a DVD player and a huge projector screen, and then it's just that 5-second clip from Back to the Future 2 when Marty rises up. over
Oh,
the
I
edge.
thought you were going to tell us to throw your coffin off a building and then raise it back up.
And no, better yet, then also just for fun, fill my coffin full of spiders and then turn it into an open casket halfway through.
I had this is a little off topic.
Arms spring out doing this thing.
I had a
Some
friend
prop.
that was like, he wanted to rig up his coffin so that like when people leaned in to like look at the body, there was like a lever they would press on and the body would start to sit up.
And then it would spit puke out of
Yeah,
its
that's
mouth.
right.
Yeah.
A lot of
I'm
fun to be
alive.
had.
I'm alive.
Don't let them bury me.
I like the idea of him recording his VO line for post-death saying, "I'm alive," and he can't get the performance right. So it just sounds like this hollow, "I'm alive." It's like, no, this is the one time you're going through all this effort. Just nail this one line. All right, that's fun. Paul from Dublin, Ireland here. He says, "Hey, I love the game despite some serious flaws. Example, the last wave of a Sable base, and there's one bad guy left I can't find. Turns out he's stuck in a container. Luckily, I had skill points in the bank because I upgraded my ground pound and just spammed that until he was knocked out. Otherwise, I've been so frustrated." That's a recurring theme. A lot of people wrote in with bugs. Like, I had a fair amount going through weird stuff where the rhino would get stuck and like walk in place. But a lot of people wrote in and said they had a lot of problems with bugs, which was surprising. But that's not where he's going with this. He says, "I want to be careful here, which is important to stress, because I'm all for powerful women being portrayed in the world.
Oh.
But Peter's 100,000 correct 100,000% correct trying to keep MJ out of danger. I'm blowing it. He is 1,000. Peter's right trying to save MJ. Because the men she's sneaking around are terrorists with guns that blew up City Hall in New York. And because she has moxie, she gets annoyed at Peter at the point of breaking up with him because he doesn't want her to get hurt by terrorists. When she gets caught and cowers in fear, rightly so, these men are going to mercilessly kill her. The next extent of her ability to react is her just saying, "No, please," like in the game over screen. He's like, "This isn't a men versus women issue. This is a man with spider powers going up against bad guys, trying to stop his insane girlfriend from taking on terrorists with absolutely no training whatsoever."
I mean, I can totally see that. It's just like, I think that it is less about like that than I think it is sort of, if it's part of a running theme of like, you always sort of like, I mean, it's implied that it's been a running theme with them of like Peter telling her not to do stuff.
In less extreme situations.
Right. And then like her saying like, "No, like I want to do this despite the fact that you've been telling me this forever." So I can see her making that leap. But like logically, yes, of course he's right to like not want her to go near, people with guns all the time, like a paramilitary group.
And it's
in
this big
case.
concession at the end of like, okay, you can go invade Osborn's tower. And he seems to be understanding of like, go for it. But I wish there's even more of him really having to wrestle with that. Because
He's like,
he's just sending his girlfriend to die at that point. Like, come on, man.
Also, why wasn't he ready? He knew she was coming. He could have been there, perched, ready to go as soon as she was in the building.
Yeah,
right?
to start that mission, you swing up to 2 blocks away, and I guess he's just sitting there the whole time.
He's trying to finish a pizza real quick. I got. Come on, be cool. What'd you guys
Oh,
think?
it's so greasy.
No one wrote in about it, but what about that like burning apartment scene? Or I guess it's Feast.
Burning apartments. Oh.
Like the other Feast, when that gets burned down, and then it gets to that point where like Miles and MJ save Peter, and Spider-Man seems surprisingly shook by all that. Like, I would have died. What?
If I hadn't sleep shot that web.
I was confused because don't you go back to Feast after that and it's not burned down?
That it's the Feast in Harlem, I think they said. It's like this weird northern feast.
Oh, weird.
The
Okay.
northern feast.
Yeah.
But I was surprised by I like the beat narratively. I like Peter getting freaked out. But at the same time, it's like, man, you've gone up against some pretty crazy things so far in the game. Like a burning building, that seems doable.
Yeah.
I know you have to like hold the platform up so they don't die and stuff, but you've done worse.
I read it more as him being sort of impacted by the fact that it's happening sort of close, like basically literally hitting close to home of like,
Yeah.
man, like people I care about could have died, and also
Yeah.
me, but
yeah, I guess you're right.
that's sort of more, I read it less about his own personal thing but more about like it hitting him that this is starting to impact people around him.
Yeah, I can dig it. Real quick, here's an interesting thought from Charles Hudman saying, after I beat the game, I realized I got tricked. I was tricked into buying a Superman game. It makes sense. Mary Jane becoming an investigative reporter like Lois Lane, Peter ignoring his home life due to feeling obligated to become Spider-Man, the I can't save everyone line that Peter says. Peter is such a positive force in New York. Everyone loves him and sees him as a symbol of hope. It seems as if Insomniac borrowed heavily from from Superman.
They definitely borrowed heavily from Spider-Man as well.
Yeah.
Shut up.
I noticed that.
Did you think about the Superman thing at all?
No.
Not
really.
not really.
Okay.
Sure, I can see some
I can
parallels.
see the
but,
yeah.
I mean, you can make parallels to Batman. You can make. He's a superhero. They're both superheroes.
Alright,
so
relax,
like
dude.
those
Just-
themes are there. Like,
just unwind
what
a
are they
little
talking
bit.
about?
He also kind of seemed like a spider to me in some of the ways that he was.
Yeah.
I don't know if I
interacting with the
got
world.
that.
I was
but
thinking of things that spiders can do and then comparing it to him, and like
what
they
he can
matched
do.
up really
It
well.
seems like he can
This
do
kind
whatever.
soul wrote into podcast@GameInformer.com, and you're ridiculing them for their interesting thought. What about like MJ being a reporter? That's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I will make the concession that it does seem like Mary Jane is quite a bit like Lois Lane.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So shut the hell up, curly haired. Yeah.
Great email.
Come on, dude.
Tyler from Greenwood, Indiana, says, hey, in the first part of the game club, I emailed about how much I enjoyed the little minigame puzzles in Dr. Octavius' lab. Boy, was I rewarded. Knowing that Peter essentially helped create Doc Ock by completing his research is what makes this game so damn good. Insomniac took something like throwaway little puzzles and interwove them into a story to actually give you the player a grander sense of accomplishment and meaning. This attention to detail is a rarity, and Insomniac really knocked it out of the park. I guess that is a cool idea.
Yeah.
You're totally right. Angie and Neji from Richmond, Virginia says the way they portrayed Doc Ock was genius. I almost thought he was going to team up with Spidey to take on Norman in the end.
Huh.
When Doc Ock was like holding Norman Osborn over the edge and he let him go, I feel like Doc Ock would have regretted that the next morning. Like, I could have tortured him more. I didn't really.
Yeah.
That's why
would've
he.
done
Yeah,
it.
that's why he.
Turning away
Yeah.
after dropping, you don't even want to see this guy die.
This is your entire mission. You've gone through so much effort just to take down this dude.
yeah.
And then that's it.
You don't take any joy in his
I
death
mean-
to it. Well, I'm done now.
I don't remember what he said.
I'm
but
bored.
He was kind of like digging into him a little bit, right? Osborn was, and so like it made sense that he dropped him.
Right. Yeah, I think, he totally was insulting him. Like, you've never been that smart. I think he said something
So
along
like,
those
well,
lines.
screw you, dude.
But the screw you, dude. Basically having the MacGruber F you, dude moment at the end, but like without the sweet act of vengeance. He's gone through so much work.
Whoa, isn't that revenge? Like killing the guy? Like that's kind of messed
It
up.
seems like you wanted to torture him or something. I felt disconnected. Maybe I didn't walk around on the street level enough in Act 3 or something, but the idea of Devil's Breath and the entire city being infected with this disease, I guess it didn't really hit me that hard or didn't really think about it too much. It was like, okay, Aunt May coughed blood. There are a couple sequences of her like helping people in Feast, but did you guys really connect with like the Devil's Breath infecting the entire city storyline?
They built it up so much, and then you like barely see any consequences from it, I feel like.
Outside of the big one with Aunt May, but yeah.
Right.
I feel like when May started getting sick, I was like, wait, what is going? Oh, right,
Yeah.
they did that whole thing.
Well,
Yeah, I'm so
what else
confused
would
about-
you have liked to see?
I don't know. Like
Everybody in the
gurneys.
city turning into mutants that I fight.
Yeah, like good video game. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I just didn't really feel it. I feel like I'm with Serial. I was reminded every once in a while, like, oh yeah, I guess there's a disease, and somehow that helps get back at Osborn and Doc Ock, even though he only wants to kill this one person. Really, he's
That
just
was
like,
the weird thing. It seemed like it was a political move to like, all right, I'm releasing Devil's Breath, and then people will blame Osborn for this. But I didn't quite understand the connection there.
yeah.
I've thrown up a thing on WikiLeaks that you can read about how I've totally exposed Norman.
There it is. Pat from Ireland. A lot of Ireland here.
Okay.
It's green, like the Green Goblin.
It's a long
It's a
podcast.
country.
Yeah. It's a classic song from Surreal. It's a country. All right, I just wanted to reference one of the revelations in Act 3 that addresses some of your misgivings about Doc Ock and the Sinister Six supplanting Mr. Negative as the big bad. While the exposition dump in Doc Ock's lair might seem a bit too convenient and reinforces your fears that the character turn was shoehorned in, I argue that the game offers up the idea that the good doctor was this way long before he dons the arms. This is similar to an email from before. But every time I was in his office throughout the game, I wondered what that blueprint on the largest board on the back of the room was. It just looked like an innocuous tech design, but the revelation that this was the blueprint for the raft, coupled with his involvement in the experiment that created Mr. Negative, lends credence to the idea that Otto's morals were sketchy in general and that his warm exterior was just a facade. So he helped people break out of the raft because he knew it from that early on? Is that the idea? I found myself reflecting on this a lot in Act 3 as the game took the time to challenge the idea that his turn could be explained away by the arms causing a change in personality. Sure, the twist was telegraphed plenty of times, but the strength of the performances in the game made me love the Doc and desperately want to explain away his villainy via some gamma rays ass science. The fact that I couldn't cling to the notion and was forced to wrestle with the idea that the Doc had a darker side that manipulated Peter is a triumph of the game's characterization, in my opinion.
So he didn't buy into the chip theory?
I guess not. Yeah, he's anti-chip theory.
Well, I know, like, sometimes I pop a box of Pringles and eat them, and I just, like, gorge myself on those chips, and so chips sometimes make me do bad things, too, so...
Bad jokes. Stephen Olulu Nike says, hey, I found Dr. Octavius' arc was extremely interesting because watching the last Game Club, I could see that you were just as confused as I was trying to understand why exactly Otto became Doc Ock. It was at the end when Doc Ock is caught and he tries to manipulate Peter in that instance to let him go and work with him again. That's when I realized his true villainy was in manipulating Peter to help him, knowing that he could barely do his work without Peter. I then remembered the voice note that you pick up in the lab towards the beginning where Doc Ock is enamored by how natural Peter is in his understanding of complex science and how Doc Ock did not see Peter as an assistant but a partner. I also thought the part where he sees Peter fixing the suit, and I realized that he must have known then that Peter is Spider-Man. The heartbreak in Peter's reaction when he realizes that Doc Ock has tried to fully kill him multiple times was devastating, because he genuinely thought Doc Ock didn't know he was Spider-Man. But yeah, just the manipulation level throughout the entire game, I think, is an interesting layer of villainy.
Yeah,
in
like
my
that.
mind, I guess I didn't quite feel it, although I thought the performance was awesome when Spider-Man was screaming like, you knew, and he was so pissed. Because in my mind, it's like, isn't he slightly better? Because he knew all these connections to Peter, and he wasn't going out and like ripping MJ limb for limb or like, torturing anybody around
That's a good
him.
point.
So it's for him to be so pissed about it. It's like, it's almost a positive, isn't it?
I mean, well, he tried to blow him up that one time, I guess, right?
Right.
I guess he beat him up, but he didn't kill him. That one time he like did really beat him up really bad.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know. Like it seemed there was possibly some restraint there.
Yeah. Could have been worse. Doc Ock, not that bad, I think is the conclusion
I mean,
here.
come
Yeah.
on. What's the big deal? I dress up as him for Halloween.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's not a terrorist in my
Oh,
book.
dude, that's not cool.
Not cool, dude. Mark V writes in and says, hey, Game Club. Ready?
Hello. Happy birthday.
It seems silly, but the part I can't get out of my mind is when Peter decides to make the anti-Doc Ock suit and does so in what appears to be mere minutes. Initially, I was completely pulled out of the game when this happened. What? No suit building montage? No believable passage of time? It must have been an arduous process. But then I realized something. I'd been making new suits throughout the entire game, each one taking literal seconds.
I mean, like that's one thing. Like, because video games play with time really strangely. But like in that cutscene, it felt like I wasn't sure why he did it or what that suit was supposed to do. Like, what specifically about that suit made it anti-Doc Ock? Besides the fact that it sort of looked like it had the color scheme of his claws.
He'd be confused. He would think he's fighting one of his own claws.
Is that me?
Also, as he got beat up and those pieces fell off, he had his other suit on underneath it, which I thought was cool.
Yeah.
I'm really cold. I need to make another layer for my suit.
And then he had Spider-Punk underneath that suit. You can see it's very strategic.
Underneath his
underwear.
skin, he has Spider-Man underwear. Yeah.
That montage was funny when he was making the suit because it was like panning over the drawings and then fading the drawings, and then it did it again, and then he had the suit, and it was like exactly my who's winning E3 montage of me doing calculations that I did in 5 minutes.
Wait a minute.
Then he did, and then he tried to jump on a skateboard and fell.
Yeah,
Also,
right.
I didn't think that suit was that cool looking for like
Oh, I
that
thought it
being
was
like
cool.
the final. I mean, it was fine, but it's look. You have like one of the most iconic looking characters of all time.
Where?
Like,
Who?
it's hard to like beat Spider-Man's classic suit, right?
Right. So he
like,
just should have put on the classic suit?
I don't know. Like
I'm going
to
old
make a new
school.
suit to be like, all right, look how cool this is now.
Right. And especially like its ultimate power was what, to like refill your gadgets? I was like,
It didn't even
okay.
seem as good as like some of the other stuff I did.
Yeah. What did you guys think about the two sequences of the fight, like the two stages of the fight for Doc Ock?
I had a little trouble with the first one, but that's just because I was being dumb and didn't notice there were like points outside the rim of the arena that you can climb on. But after that,
Right.
it seemed okay.
Yeah.
So it felt pretty in line with the rest of those boss fights in
Yeah.
terms of like you're kind of just waiting for the moment where you can press triangle.
Yeah.
But that second fight I thought was like interesting.
I thought it was cool the idea that he couldn't use his webs anymore
Yeah.
and just go
Yeah.
in and punch him in the face. Like any
Yeah.
game that just ends with brawling and beating the crap out of a bad dude with your fist. That's
Yeah.
And
good.
on the side of the building was cool.
Yeah, the perspective angle for sure. I thought it looked just incredible. The music was great.
I'd be
was well
curious
done.
to see if you can even fail that because I think like that would be one of those things where it's like it's a really cool set piece, but I think if you fail it once, it kind of like saps all the power out of it. Of like,
Ragdoll off the building.
yeah,
I wanted to see. I thought it was cool, conceptually really cool looking. I wanted to see a little bit more variety to the combat because it was kind of like the same combo over and over again.
yeah.
I wanted to see him maybe rip off another arm or like some sense of progression going on throughout that.
Yeah.
Even when you're fighting him on top of the building, the first time you do that combo and take him out, like that looks cool, but then you do it like 3 or 4 more times and just kind of loses some of its emphasis when it's the same exact animation every time.
Right, right. And by the way, I'm just noticing in my notes that apparently there's a line that I forgot about where Doc Ock says, "I will cure the city after I bring down Osborn." But that's like after he thought that he
See?
threw him off
He's
the...
not a bad guy.
I know, it's just a little confusing. Let's see. Steve Barfoot from Naugatuck, Connecticut says, "Hey, GI Crew, the last cutscene really cemented my love for Peter and Octavius' voice acting. Hear the cracks in Peter's voice while going against Doc Ock was gut-wrenching because of how much he looked up to Otto. I loved how they gave Otto an almost Walter White-esque background with his relationship to Norman and Oscorp. It made their feud believable. Also, the Rocky joke between Electro and Spidey was probably the best joke in the game. We didn't
The
mention it, though.
Adrian one, yeah.
Right, and then he's like, "No one gets my jokes." Then Electro's like, "I will crush you," wasn't he? He's like, "Hey, you got it. All right."
Yeah,
That's
that's
fun.
good.
I guess Brian Intihar, the creative director, along with Bill Roseman, the Marvel representative, they both share Rocky as one of their favorite films. And
Oh,
that was
really?
a reference to that.
Thank you for telling us that secret.
Yeah,
It is a very good movie.
Little pro tip.
That stays between us.
Yeah. I agree. The voice acting towards the end I thought was incredible. Just having like basically it was almost like episode 3. You are the chosen one. But I love just hearing Peter scream like, "You are my hero." And then it's such a simple line, but I loved it so much where Doc Ock is just almost trying to explain things to him. He's like, "This means so much to me." And Spider-Man's like, "Not as much as it means to me." Just having like very clear, just expressing you could not be more simple on a storytelling level, but it's still fun to hear those two just, "No, I'm very confident that I need to do this because it means a lot to me."
I in general agree, but like for me, it was the moment where right, this is the same guy who does Yosuke in Persona 4 when he started yelling. I was like, oh, I recognize that voice actor now.
This is Spider-Man's voice actor?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, you
okay.
didn't recognize him until the last
No,
fight.
like I felt like he was doing a pretty good job of sort of not, of using his like a normal voice, but not sort of being the Yuri Lowenthal voice. But like when he started yelling, it definitely felt like this is sort of like the intonations of his voice started like coming into place for me. Of like, oh, this is that character that does other voices.
Right, sure. Tom from Redmond, Washington says, "Hey, GI folks, hello. Let's talk about the end of the Doc Ock fight. That look on Peter's face when Otto was begging for another chance just crushed me. You realize that Spider-Man has to choose between dooming his mentor to live all his days out as a vegetable, or letting him use technology that will eat his brain to save his body. Either way, Otto will never be whole again, and Peter can't provide a positive outcome for him no matter what he does. F," says Tom.
Press F to pay respect.
Yeah.
Yeah, the final line. Hey, what the... Dustin W. writes in from Clanton, Alabama, and he says, "They killed Aunt May!"
Wait, what?
Yeah. Didn't think they would do it, but I felt it coming towards the end. Is this the first time May has died in a Superman story? Sorry, Spider-Man?
Yes, in a Superman story, yes.
Yeah,
All right,
it's
all right.
bold new
All right,
direction for that.
everybody. All right.
She's died a couple times.
Oh, she has?
Yeah, she died once, and then it was revealed at the end that she knew exactly that he was Spider-Man the whole time. So it was kind of like echoes of that.
Oh, okay.
But then it turned out that was just a plant from Norman Osborn that he had hired an actor to play Aunt May, and he'd kidnapped the real Aunt May.
That's probably
And
what
held her
happened here.
hostage for years.
I think
yeah.
didn't she also die in that like One More Day storyline where like it was like right after Civil War and that's why he wished for like
Yeah, she was about to die, and the only way to save her was to make a deal with the
With the
devil.
devil, yeah.
The people are not happy about that.
That seems odd. Vanna Winland says, "Hey there, writing in to talk about how incredible, though extremely sad, the scene with Spider-Man and Peter Parker waiting by Aunt May's hospital bed is. The fact that Peter tried to stay strong and act heroic, saying things like, 'It's going to be okay, ma'am,' while we know he's struggling to not let his emotions get the best of him in this moment was so powerful. I agree. When he's like leaving the suit on, that's so good. Even when he has the chance to save May with the antidote, he resists his want to act on it because it would mean killing hundreds of others. The scene meant so much to Peter, Spider-Man's character, because it proved that he's selfless and willing to do the right thing, even if it hurts him." Also, when Peter took his mask off and broke down by Aunt May's bedside, it really showed how human he is. It made me think how much I've done as Spider-Man up until that point, and realizing, whoa, at his core, Peter's just a regular guy who happened to get some powers, yet he's beaten up some of the scummiest of scum villains. Yeah. What do you guys think of that sequence in particular?
I was I didn't think she was going to die, even until like the moment where she flatlined. I was like, well, she's not going to die. And then you heard the sound. I was like, whoa, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think my mouth dropped open at that point.
It's effective. It really worked for me. Even I think it speaks a lot that it even has the most dumb comic book setup for that moment of like, we only have enough in this container to either cure this person or the entire city.
Or everybody.
But you just quickly let it go because I think the performances are so good. Like when Peter gets down, he's just like, I don't know what to do. And he's like crying. So good.
Yeah. And he's like, yeah, you do.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
like that was the sort of crystallization of like what I think is like the theme of Act 3, which is sort of you start the game sort of 8 years into Peter's sort of career as Spider-Man. He's like super confident, he knows what he's doing, and then like Act 3 is sort of that slowly falling apart because like early on it's the idea of like all these things are happening and I don't know which one to tackle first, and it's sort of he's starting to stretch himself thin, and then over the course of the act it feels like sort of the Spider-Man becomes not enough, and then he sort of starts like having to deal with the repercussions of like when his heroism alone isn't enough to like solve every problem.
Right. And what's the
Yeah,
solution?
it's almost like Superman.
Another
like a
Spider-Man.
Superman story.
I mean, maybe. Yeah. He's like, sweet. Now I can take the load off. Chris,
Now your relatives can die.
I'll see to it. Chris,
Oh, he's the villain in the next game.
Who's your uncle?
who's your uncle?
Bob?
Chris from Portland, Tennessee says, well, it's official. I've teared up at the ending of 2 video games now. Halo 4 and Spider-Man. Of course.
That's Halo 4.
Yeah, Halo 4. Isn't that
Wait,
interesting?
how does that one end?
Oh, I don't know. He said he got some bad news.
They
while he
screwed
was
up the
playing it.
Halo lore.
No.
I'm sorry, your dog's dead.
Henry from Gettysburg says, hey, dudes, honest show of hands, who teared up at the end? And what was it that got you? For me, it was when May said, I'm proud of you, and Ben would have been too.
Oh,
Did you guys tear up?
I did not tear up.
Okay.
I don't have a soul.
Yeah. Closest I came was MJ saying, oh my God, but I still didn't tear
I feel
up.
like the and Ben would have been too. I think that was probably the closest. Like that was the most thinking got me.
And what does
for
it
sure.
look like when a game is close to making you cry?
Oh shit! It got me.
Cool. Hang on. Let me write that down. This is making me cry. Okay.
Yeah. You're gonna quote me on that one. For sure.
Uh-huh. William A. has other thoughts. He says, hey, guys, so I finished the game last night, and first off, I really enjoyed the experience, but maybe felt I overhyped the game in my head going into it. I felt as though they rushed the Sinister Six battles too quickly in an effort to progress further, and I didn't like how they made Martin Lee's character feel more like background noise the farther it went. While the final cutscene with Octavius was an amazing scene, the ending was just so abrupt. May dies. 10 seconds later, a funeral clip. 10 seconds later, he's kissing MJ in a diner. Credits. Then Miles faking flashing Peter. It just seemed to me such a weird way to wrap up an overall fantastic game, and I haven't heard many people bring this up online. Also, Peter's face looks so weird compared to the other faces. It seems as though they really aged his skin.
Specifically, cutting from the kiss with Mary Jane, it's like such a quiet scene, and then the credits are softly brought up. It just didn't feel like how superhero movies end.
Yeah.
I feel like it could have slammed to credits on something interesting.
Him swinging towards the camera.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think that's the way to do it. Yeah.
Landing on the
yeah.
flagpole?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's also weird because I feel like it has the same problem as Marvel movies do, where it's like they kind of don't end sort of like well because you're always expecting, okay, what's the next scene? Is there going to be a post-credit scene? Or like what's going to happen
lingering
next?
thing.
Even as the credits are rolling, it's kind of like a weird thing. But
I mean, I think overall, though, I thought that ending was great.
yeah,
It was good. Yeah,
and,
I
and
liked it.
I think like even before then, I feel like I understand it does feel a little compressed in terms of like this thing is happening so fast, but I feel like that speaks to the sort of like the momentum with which all of this stuff is sort of following around Peter like as he's going on. I feel like it
Yeah.
fits even if it like is sort of cramped up in terms of pacing.
Yeah.
I resonate with a few of his issues, let's say. Just like the Sinister Six did feel a little rushed in my mind.
Right.
And it was like all the back third of the game. So like felt like we could have spaced that out a little bit more. The same thing with like Martin Lee. They set him up to be this big figure, and then it kind of like dwindled near the end of the game. So I get some of that.
Yeah. Alec also writes in and says they really should have gotten Naughty Dog's lip technology for that last kiss. I guess I didn't notice it looking janky at all.
Oh, I didn't
It was a little weird.
A little weird. Kiss
Yeah.
expert.
It looks
So
how
that's
most
good.
of
That's
my
right.
kisses look.
Let's
filmed.
see. This is interesting. Jay Purrington writes in and just says, "Hey, do you think this game has a chance to reach a wider audience than Spider-Man: Homecoming?"
I don't know.
I mean, Spider-Man Homecoming is pretty big.
Yeah. And also Matt Cohn from Cashin, Wisconsin just says, like, the greatest achievement of this game is that it has such a wide net of availability. Like, it's a basic Spider-Man story, but also services fans. It's really crazy that it walked that line successfully.
Unless you like Xbox, you can.
Yeah, there's a $400 console barrier that Homecoming does not have.
Yeah, you're right. That whole thing. Let's see. People are excited about DLC. We are too. Maybe we'll talk about it on the podcast in the future. Simple question here. Mitch Z says, with the conclusion of this game, looking towards the sequel, that for sure is going to happen, would you be satisfied if the second game also took place in New York City?
Yeah, I don't know why not.
They could add like Queens and stuff.
Yeah, they could add one of the boroughs or something.
Yeah.
And it probably will dive into like Peter's backstory a little bit more with his parents, and that'll be a reason to go to Queens.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think if they sort of if they change up the side objectives enough, I feel like and also use a different district, I think they could do enough to sort of freshen that city up if you're sort of involved in different things. Because if it's more backpacks, more sort of those more trivial objectives, I feel like it will feel very samey. But I think they can do enough with that city to make it feel new again.
Also, like, New York's a cool city. Like, I never complain when they watch like 2 movies in a row that are both set in New York. Like, it's a cool background for things. Like, you just have to have like interesting missions.
Well, look at
and
Yakuza,
other
for
collectibles
example.
and stuff.
Right?
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
many games have been set in those cities over and over again? Here's a weird one. Not weird, nice. Steve Winters from York, Pennsylvania says, hey, this game has been amazing, and the podcast is a way to get a slight Spider-Man fix while I'm at work and listen on Fridays. Thank you. This game has also been a nice way to get my brother's mind off his cancer. It'd be nice to have some of Osborn's GR27 cure. Interesting. I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer or Pity Parker for that matter, but my brother's diagnosed with Ewing sarcoma recently, and video games have been a good way for us to connect. Even though this game is not multiplayer, it's been an incredible experience for the both of us. We talk about it a lot, and listening to the game club pretty much echoes our opinions for the most part. He says Reeves's are just off the mark. No. Anyway, could you send some well wishes his way? I think he'd really get a kick out of it. It would make his day. His name is Kev, but everybody calls him Kevy.
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 Hey,
Come on,
Kevy.
Kevy. Thank you. Hope you like the game, Kevy.
we're pulling for ya.
Podcast@gameinformer.com. Let us know what you think. And then they say, hopefully Red Dead 2 will be next. Kevy, Red Dead 2. Kevy, Red Dead 2. Tell us if you want us to do Red Dead 2. I feel it's almost like the freight train that we can't dodge is doing Red Dead 2 as the next game club. But there's a part of me that wants to dodge it and just do Balloon Fight or something weird.
Yeah.
Game club for
Honestly, that'd be kind of cool. Do one small like weirdo game.
Yeah.
Red Dead's gonna be so huge.
That's going to be such a large organ. I have to imagine Red Dead's going to be way longer than Spider-Man, though.
It's going to be 3 seasons of Game Club. Do Red Dead.
We hope you like it.
Yeah.
And we're only going to game club the PS4 version of Red Dead.
That's
so
right. Exactly.
Xbox players, don't talk to us.
Sorry, you can't even play it.
I'm very sorry to all the Xbox fans that listen to the podcast. But hey, maybe you don't have to buy a PS4 and Spider-Man because you listen to this. You get the full experience, you know? So we're saving you money in a weird way.
That's right.
So you owe us money.
Podcast@gameinformer.com. Google Wallet it. We'll make it work. What do you guys think about Spider-Man overall? Any big takeaways we haven't hit yet? I feel like we kind of missed the overall assessment. But Leo, final thoughts on the game.
It's a fun game. I don't beat many games that I play. And I don't know if I would have beaten this one if we
Really?
didn't do the game club. I would have left it on good terms, but like 10 hours in, I would have been like, okay, I get it.
Really? That's shocking.
Just because the story never quite clicked with me and I never really wanted to.
Wait,
Well,
story
but
never clicked. That's
You
crazy.
don't seem like a guy who's like crazy about story though all the time.
Oh, no. Yeah, I mean, I liked the gameplay and I got to play a lot of it and then I was happy.
Okay.
But it was like, I will keep doing this so that we can talk about it on the game club. And then by the third act, I came around because I like those boss battles so much.
Sure.
Wow, that's really surprising. Okay.
But you were pretty excited about this going in too.
Yeah, definitely.
Just
but
for the gameplay.
I really beat 10% of the games I start, honestly.
What's the last one you beat?
Spider-Man.
Cool.
Weird
Serial,
coincidence.
what
I
do you
don't know.
think of the overall
I
game?
leave every game at the last level. It's a problem.
I think I was pretty impressed with the story overall.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's like, I think Homecoming is still like far and away my favorite Spider-Man like story so far that I'm not a big comics guy, but like,
Yeah.
but I think this does a pretty good job of sort of planting the Spider-Man story in a video game in a way that doesn't feel like cheesy or forced.
Yeah.
And it's probably better than like the Garland, is that his name? Those Spider-Man movies?
Andrew
Amazing
Garfield?
Spider-Man?
Yeah.
Eric
I
Garland?
I don't know, man.
I'd watch
Gar
that.
people are all the same to me. But yeah, I think it's better than those two movies. But yeah, maybe I haven't watched the Tobey Maguire ones, but in a long time.
Oh, okay.
I haven't, so I wouldn't know. But like, I feel like this is a pretty solid story told in a video game that happens to have Spider-Man. And like, as Spider-Man being my favorite superhero, I think this does pretty well. But like, I think it does right by him.
Yeah. I know on the podcast when Kyle and Reiner were talking about the game, I stumped them by just saying, what's the story about? And I found myself kind of coming back to that theme at the end of Act 3. And it's like, I guess it's about letting go of the past and letting go of vengeance. Is that the conclusion here?
Just kind of looking at it from their perspective, it's like, how would you have like encapsulated the story without spoiling anything?
Right.
Too, it's like it would have been kind of hard to like talk.
I guess it's
too
about
much.
vengeance. Isn't it?
Vengeance,
I feel like this game is a lot more about plot than it is sort of like themes on like more or less. It feels like, but yeah, I like the game overall. I don't know that I would. I think people were talking about it's like, oh, I don't know if it's God of War might have some competition, but I don't think it's in that realm at all. But this is like pretty solid game. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
I know Elise and I think JV said it was her favorite game of the year right now, which is surprising over God of War.
It's mine too. Yeah.
Really?
God of War I liked is not at the top of my list of the year. It just didn't click for me the way it clicked for everybody else. But
Reese, your
really like
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man.
This is your favorite character of all time. I need to know your read on this game in general, other than
I
it's
liked
my
it a
game of the
lot.
year.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely the best Spider-Man game ever.
Yeah.
It's like for me, there were highs that matched the Arkham games.
Yeah.
It just was filled with a lot of more like clutter that wasn't up to the same bar, and so some of my excitement was diminished a little bit by like, oh, I'm grinding through and doing all these crimes, or I'm finding this
Well,
dumb.
that's
like,
your
little
fault for
cat.
doing 100%,
It is,
frankly.
I guess, but it's like, yeah. So it's maybe my fault for loving the character so much that I wanted to do it all, but
compared to other like Spider-Man stories, I mean, is this upper echelon or
it's up there. Yeah, it's upper echelon, I would say.
Okay.
I really like their portrayal of Doc Ock specifically, and I liked their relationship with Mary Jane. Like Mary Jane is a character that is like kind of a party girl in the comics for a long time, and never really. It feels like, especially recently, she's had trouble sort of like clicking and like finding her place, and so it was kind of really cool to see their portrayal of her in this as well.
Did she surprise you?
Oh yeah.
I don't know about surprise, but
No.
yeah, I
Other
liked
than when she
her.
jumped off that roof, I think that's the
Yeah,
only
maybe
time
that was a surprise. That's what Brian was talking about. Yes,
when you
I
got
would-
the stealth takedown, that was a little surprising. I was like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
She was surprisingly into that too. She's like, "Good boy," and crap. Like she's like
Yeah.
tasting those guys. Like, all right, MJ, all right.
It kept having flashbacks to American Animals. If anybody's seen that,
No.
The idea that tasing someone will knock them out in one stun is explored in American Animals.
What is American Animal?
Is it true?
It's about some college kids stealing paintings. I don't want to spoil any of it. It's
Sounds
really, really
freaky.
good.
Also, the number of times someone is able to punch someone out in one hit,
Yeah.
kind of high. Like Miles does it, feels a little weird.
Oh, right.
How fragile humans are in that universe.
Had he been bitten by that point?
No.
I don't think
Okay,
so.
yeah. At the time it happened, I was like, maybe he got bitten off screen and he's got powers now.
Yeah.
Because that's weird.
Yeah.
Also,
Oh,
Spider-Man
come on,
told
have
him
you ever
one
taken a
line about
punch? Like,
Spider-Man.
if the punch connects right, you can get knocked out.
Prove it. I thought the sequence was funny because he was like stealthing around, and because I was stuck there for so long, I was stealthing around for a long time around Rhino, and then he like walks 20 feet, sees two criminals, and is like, "Hey, you leave her alone!" Like starts like yelling at these criminals, like the Rhino is still right over there, dude. Are you out of your mind?
That's crazy.
Anyways, it's a good story.
Oh, but you?
Oh,
this was like,
yeah.
You really liked it?
Yeah,
Hold up?
in my mind, and I know I've never played one before, but this is about as good as a Spider-Man game could be, and that is a crazy feat. And it's nice. I brought it up in Act 1, but it's fun to have these types of experiences that remind you why you like something that's just generally in pop culture. It's like, okay, yeah. Spider-Man. We've spent our whole lives with Spider-Man, but to create something that stands out that reminds people, oh, Spider-Man is really cool. That's a monumental task. And so, yeah, overall, I was much more impressed by the story and specifically the writing than I thought.
They did justice to the character, which I appreciated. And like the combat was more fun than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So-
definitely came around to the combat pretty well. Like even
Yeah.
though it can be a little repetitive because I feel like I found my combo and it doesn't seem like the game really gives you options, like reasons to vary up
Sure.
your combos.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not Devil May Cry, but like honestly, like it, because it's a little bit simpler than that, it appeals to a wider audience.
I also feel that it does a good job of making you feel like the character of like I'm zipping around between different bad guys and sort of like throwing them around and using a lot of webs. Like it's a pretty good combat that feels like a Spider-Man specific combo system.
Right.
And
right.
very freeform. They
Yeah.
described him in the cover trip videos as the acrobatic improviser, and I feel like they completely nailed that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
So I thought that Insomniac, congrats, good job, and I'm
Are you shaking their hand?
That's right. I'm shaking their invisible Miles
Thank you,
Morales hand.
Insomniac.
Their 4 arms. Wait a minute, whose hands are we shaking?
Get his neural chip.
That's
But
dumb.
I'm really looking forward to see what they do next.
Yeah.
And it's I don't know, probably 3 or 4 years away, which is kind of sad, but
Yeah. It's going to be a long haul. Exciting times. Hey, Spider-Man, thank you for absolutely everybody that played along with us. I'm amazed at the number of emails we got. I'm sorry we didn't get to all of them. Podcast@GameInformer.com for all feedback. And for the next game club, let's do it again, guys.
Let's do it again. This is super fun. I look forward to it every week.
Do you really?
Yeah, it was great.
Oh, sweet.
Talk about video games.
I like it. I
like it.
Wait a minute. I like the game club. It freaks me out when I have dozens and dozens of pieces of paper, but it's always nice to I feel like give the game the discussion it deserves.
And even in general, just an episodic exploration of something, like with, all TV shows coming to Netflix a full season at a time,
Right.
that kind of theory pitching, like it never really happens anymore, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah, more theory pitching, says
Have
Lou.
people written in on what they want us to do next?
Red Dead. And stop playing PlayStation games, you cowards. That's basically how it works.
Forza Horizon 4 Game Club coming up.
That was just a clip from a larger show called The Game Informer Show. You can find it on iTunes, Google Play, or GameInformer.com. We take the fun opportunities and exclusive information from Game Informer magazine and boil it into a show that airs every Thursday with exclusive cover story information, developer interviews, a lot of fun stuff. So come love games with us.